Picture Reifenhardt's wake-up call getting lashed to a tree trunk every morning only to be beaten to a pulp for the rest of the day. And this happens every single day. Yeah, this definitely ain't the morning yoga routine your typical useless manhwa protagonist signs up for. The poor dude even made a break for it once, but his master instantly snagged him. See, his master was convinced this brutal grind was the only path forward, the only way to forge him into a gigachad, just like himself. To figure out how Reifenhardt got shackled to this lunatic, who lives and breathes nothing but the hustle and the muscle, we gotta take it all the way back. In a world seething with hatred for monsters, Reifenhardt was once a legendary mage, branded by humanity as the reincarnation of pure evil, a warlock who commanded legions of monsters. Or at least, that's the story the humans spun. The reality, he was probably one of the most compassionate souls to ever walk the earth, because he genuinely believed that monsters deserved to live too. From where he stood, humans were the real villains, the ones enslaving and exploiting every other species, for their own selfish gain. So he ghosted human society, choosing to build a life among other beings, and his connection to them only grew stronger. His leadership and vision united all the outcast races, trolls, dwarves, orcs, you name it. With their combined power, he didn't just become the most OP mage alive, capable of slinging 10-circle magic. He also founded an entire nation where they could thrive without judgment, the Antari Empire. But humans couldn't stand watching these monsters build a society and claim territory, so they ignited a full-scale war, desperate to shove them back into the dark corners of the world. This unleashed a tidal wave of catastrophe, with rivers of blood flowing on both sides. Humanity's 5 so-called greatest heroes assassinated Reifenhardt's most trusted generals, and then in a final act of cruelty, they even murdered his lover, an elven woman named Cyrus. With his inner circle wiped out, this squad of heroes was now closing in to finish off Reifenhardt for good. But that was their biggest mistake. Reifenhardt had officially hit his breaking point. With everyone he cared about gone, the gloves were off. He finally became the demon king that humanity's propaganda had always painted him to be, and he absolutely annihilated 4 of their precious heroes in an instant. The only one left standing was the martial king Tesron. This dude was a colossal beast, built like a freaking Greek god. A pure musclehead overflowing with so much raw power that with a single punch, he pulverized every bone in Reifenhardt's skull as if it were styrofoam. In that moment, Reifenhardt knew there was absolutely no way he could win a straight-up fight against this walking demigod, so he activated his ultimate trump card regression magic. With the full might of his 10-circle magic, he tried to rewind time, vowing to reclaim everything he'd lost. But at the very last second, Tesron charged in and interfered, throwing the entire spell into chaos. The magic still worked, sort of. Reifenhardt shot back to the past, but instead of his original scrawny, book-smart mage body, he woke up inside the insanely ripped physique of his enemy Tesron. And in a wild twist of fate, Tesron was also flung into the past, but he was now trapped inside the weak body of a young Reifenhardt. And just like that, Reifenhardt became the student of the legendary former King of Fists, Gerard Chrome Proteus. Every agonizing trial Tesron had suffered through to become a gym god, Reifenhardt was now forced to endure himself. One afternoon, while his master is down the mountain visiting a village, Reifenhardt tries to see if he's got any magic left, attempting to cast a simple spell. Nothing. It fizzles out completely. The guy can't even light a magical spark, and a wave of despair washes over him. Is becoming a wizard again, even on the table in this new body. Then suddenly he feels a presence that is distinctly not human. A figure with green skin materializes from the shadows, looking tense, and tells him to just walk away if he values his life. Reifenhardt sizes him up. He's a 3 or 4-year-old orc, almost certainly an escapee from some gladiator pit. The little orc doubles down on his threat, promising to let him live if Reifenhardt just plays dumb and pretends he saw nothing. But hearing the kid actually try to negotiate, Reifenhardt remembers that orcs are a fiercely proud race. They don't go for pointless violence even when they're backed into a corner. He switches to the ancient orcish language and gently asks if he's being hunted. Totally stunned, the little guy admits he is. The redhead immediately offers to help, asking the terrified kid to trust him. The orc, hearing the sacred tongue of his people from this human, is already looking at him like a brother, sensing a genuine kindness in his aura. But he still hesitates, warning him that getting involved will only get him killed. From the kid's formal way of speaking, Reifenhardt suspects he might be orcish royalty. He insists that he has the power to protect him, and with a flick of his wrist conjures a magical veil to create a perfect hiding spot. Before vanishing, the young orc admits it's wild to see a dude built like a tank call himself a wizard, then gives him a heartfelt thank you. Minutes later, a squad of soldiers stomps into the clearing, complaining about how they're only getting a few silver coins to chase down one orc. Their leader spots Reifenhardt and offers him a gold coin if he's seen an orc, a classic obvious trap. Reifenhardt plays dumb and says no, but one of the soldiers immediately spots a set of small tracks leading away. Reifenhardt curses himself. His simple concealment spell couldn't hide footprints. Still, there's no way in hell he's letting these goons pass. This is the sacred territory of the future King of Fists. The soldiers are furious getting stonewalled by some random country kid, but their leader urges caution. There are over 10 of them, sure, but something about this redhead's vibe feels off. Even with his jacked physique, the soldiers write him off. He's just a kid after all, and tells the guy to get lost. That's when Ryfan's entire aura explodes. He calmly states that his bare hands are lethal weapons, since a single swing could literally end most people. So the more compassionate option is to use an actual weapon. He snatches a nearby club, a wild look in his eyes, as he promises they'll at least survive what's coming next. See, while the gym Unbreakable is all about hand-to-hand combat, they still drill you on weapon skills. This detail alone starts to make the soldiers nervous. They're sneering, asking if this punk really thinks he can take them on after learning a few party tricks. But the second the fight ignites, Ryfan moves like a blur, effortlessly yeeting grown men across the road. The rest of them dogpile him, screaming to put the little monster down for good. What they don't get is that these club techniques are less for actual fighting and more for brutally forging disciples into unstoppable warriors. As the brawl rages, Ryfan clocks their swordsmanship and instantly pegs them as hired mercenaries. Wielding the cudgel, he unleashes a vicious onslaught of strikes, a symphony of pain engineered to target every inch of the body. When one goon tries to sneak him from behind, his sword just crumples like tinfoil against Ryfan's back, sending the guy into a panic, screaming that no human should be this tanky. The twisted beauty of the cudgel style is that it's designed not to kill. Joints get shattered and bones will absolutely crack, however. The targets survive. Before long, only a single soldier is left standing, trembling as he demands to know what the hell Ryfan is. But the redhead just keeps that club swinging coldly, reminding him that his entire crew is already down for the count, and it's time for him to join them. Once the dust settles, the mangled mercenaries are actually thanking him for not killing them. Ryfan, however, got a little too into that beatdown, a grim reflection of the savage teachings of Jim Unbreakable. Afterwards, the young orc approaches Ryfan, his eyes full of awe. He swears he'll never forget this day and vows to repay the debt no matter the cost. Ryfan just tells him a true warrior never bows his head so easily. But the orc now considers Ryfan his master, a sacred role in his culture that carries the same absolute weight as a knight's fealty to his king. When asked for his name, the dark mage formally introduces himself as Ryfan Hearthwald and Terrace. He then asks the young orc about his future. The kid confesses he'd rather die a free wanderer than ever live as a slave. He's determined to find his own place on this massive continent. To help him on his way, Ryfan points him towards the land of trials deep in the Rocket Mountains, where the legendary hidden Blue Bear tribe resides. Just before they part ways, he learns the orc's full name. He is the green orc Tathid, son of Crota, and the bearer of Lat's axe. The name Tathid hits Ryfan like a ton of bricks. The mighty orc who would one day become one of the 4 warrior kings, chief of the legendary Blue Bear tribe, and eventually the high chief of all orcs. He can't help but wonder if the original Tesron ever crossed paths with this future legend. For the moment, he just takes it in, amused that destiny made him the savior of an orc feeling a strange and powerful connection. Looking out over the mountain range, King Ryfan reminisces about Tathid Skiris Mashalan, and Alport quietly hoping he might see them all again someday. 6 months after his run-in with Tathid, Grandpa Fist fires a concentrated blast of energy straight at Ryfan, only to be shocked when the Demon Lord casually deflects it with Spiral Guard. The old man just roars with laughter, completely impressed. He recalls when the kid first showed up, insisting his name was Ryfan Hearth. He had just assumed all the brutal beatings had scrambled the kid's brain. Ryfan is baffled, wondering why the old geezer is dredging up a memory from 6 years ago. It then dawns on Gerard that a full 10 years have passed since their training began. Ryfan has become insanely powerful, yet the old man still grumbles that he's only 190 centimeters, practically a short king, by the insane standards of Jim Unbreakable. He gripes that the first 3 kings, Valkenschut, Calbrain, and Rostel, were all towering giants over 2 meters tall. So Grandpa gives him the side-eye, asking if Ryfan has been properly practicing his breathing techniques. Thinking back, Ryfan remembers being a colossal 2.4 meters tall in his past life. He claims it's just his body type, but internally he's freaking out. This old fossil actually thinks he can get taller with a breathing trick. Gerard just shrugs, admitting that size doesn't really matter, as long as the kid is powerful and durable. For the final test, Ryfan settles into his stance and unleashes a 4-stack Calamity Horn, launching himself forward like a cannonball and completely obliterating a solid rock wall into nothing but pebbles. The old man explodes with laughter, absolutely certain that this kid is going to be a nightmare for anyone who gets in his way. Ryfan is just relieved to have finally hit 4 stacks, and here's the 2 words he's been waiting for. Gerard proclaims that it's time for him to leave and experience the world. Then completely out of nowhere, Gerard calls him by his real name, Ryfan Hearth, and tells him to live exactly how he wants. Be a hero, be a villain, it makes no difference so long as he's the one choosing his path. That, he explains, is the ultimate reward for surviving a decade of his hellish training. He then shares some advice he received 60 years prior from Master Rostel, the third king of fists, who gave him 3 rules for life. First, get rich but never through shady means. When Rifen points out he just said being a villain was fine, Gerard chuckles and explains that to be a top-tier villain, you have to operate with some dignity. Second, always side with those who have been wronged, because that is how you command respect. But he adds a warning. Just because someone is weak doesn't mean they're in the right. And since almost everyone is weaker than Rifen, he'll have to learn to judge wisely. And the third most critical rule, the legacy of Jim Unbreakable must never be allowed to fade. His teachings have to be passed to a new student. Not some prodigy, just someone he absolutely refuses to give up on. To start him off, Gerard slips him a bit of travel cash. A pouch with about 30 silver coins and a fresh set of clothes. Rifan is low-key shook that one of the wealthiest men in the whole Vasily kingdom, a dude with a mansion in the capital, would offer such a small bag. Okay, it's half a year's living expenses for a normal person, but he was definitely expecting a bigger flex. Gerard just explains that the martial sect had a fixed rate for send-offs, and back in his day, it was only 25 coins. He also casually mentions a little gift he stashed in the Set Lad Mountains, handing Rifan a map with an X marking the spot. As they part ways, the sheer reality of his freedom feels totally surreal, right until a massive calamity blast erupts into the sky. It's Grandpa Fist's signature send-off, a final explosive message to stay tough as the heir to his legendary teachings. Without a moment's hesitation, Rifan absolutely bolts, rocketing down the mountain at top speed. Meanwhile, a villager pleads with the chief to just let it slide, but the old man stands his ground, demanding what's fair from a noble, and his night for the feast they just devoured. The smug noble calls them low-born wretches and flicks a single gold coin at their feet, mocking them that they've probably never even seen one. The chief just calmly fires back. This isn't nearly enough. Utterly enraged, the noble strikes him, snarling that a knight knows the market. Way better than some peasants. It becomes crystal clear these so-called knights are just glorified bandits. They rolled into the village, ate them out of house and home, and now think they can settle the bill with 1 coin, completely ignoring the true cost and the people's labor. Just then, Lord Stephen shows up, asking his man Edward what the holdup is. With a chilling smile, he calls the villagers wretches, warning his knight not to waste mercy on commoners who don't know their place. Cut to Riefenhardt in bed with Cyrus, asking the sun-touched elf why she's touching him like that. She whispers that his lean frame is sharp and elegant, almost like a perfectly forged blade. But now trapped in Tesrin's body, he feels more like a clumsy stone golem. Tears well up in his eyes. He just wants Cyrus to forgive him. On the bright side, he's taller. By his math, Cyrus has to be around 70 years old now, while he's trapped in a 17-year-old's body. He's finally made it to Chrome City in the southern Vasily kingdom, driven by the knowledge that she's scheduled to be sold at a slave auction in the Chetan kingdom next year. A huge part of him just wants to tear the whole place down and free her, but going loud would totally sabotage his main quest of reclaiming his magic. So he figures money is the smarter play, except elf slaves cost an absolute fortune, and my guy is completely broke. Still, he's not powerless. He has a powerhouse body, razor-sharp skills, and the ultimate cheat code, memories of the future. He starts hearing rumors on the street about some ruins along the road to the Chetan kingdom. At the exact same time, Lord Stephen is grilling a guy named Todd, a ruins exploration specialist, and a wizard from Delphi's magic tower, desperate to know if he's found the ruins. But Todd is giving him the runaround. Stephen is absolutely convinced that's the spot where the legendary swordsman, Sir Claude von Leotis Altine, is buried. It's been 3 days since Rifan ditched Chrome City, hiking north on the main road toward the Hatton Mountains. Thanks to his insane stamina, the cold doesn't even bother him, though he remembers how the OG martial kings used to walk around shirtless, even in the dead of winter. He activates artificial flashbacks, a secret technique that lets him pull up memories on demand, and he locks onto the ancient ruins in the Hatton range. In his past life, he actually met Mage Todd at the Magic Tower, the same guy who explored those ruins with the Altian family. But Riefenhardt has a secret. He remembers finding a treasure hoard that Todd's crew completely missed, a haul he later sold for over 2,000 gold coins. Now, as he walks into Cattle Village, it's total déjà vu, with the locals whispering nervously about how no one ever dares to venture near the Valley of Death. The villagers are panicking because some nobles are demanding a guide, and they know saying no will end very badly for them. Since the chief is sick, a man named Ted, who knows the mountains, volunteers. He instantly regrets it when his wife and kids burst into tears while the other villagers practically shove him out the door. Just then, Rifan smashes his face against their window like a complete madman and cheerfully volunteers to take the job, posing as a simple passerby. He claims he just happened to overhear them. He knows it's a super suspicious move since strangers don't just pop up on your property. When they question him, he declares with total confidence that he knows the area inside and out because he's been there before. They warn Rifan that the Valley of Death is a one-way trip, but he just insists he's made it back before. Privately thinking how lucky they are, he showed up to save one of their own. See, the Valley of Death isn't a valley, it's a dungeon, a relic from the ancient Silver Age. 50 years ago, the great Claude of House Altian awakened his aura at the young age of 45 and launched a legendary career of countless adventures. His epic exploits were famous across the whole kingdom, but when the fame got to his head, he overestimated himself and charged into that valley with only a single servant by his side. Neither of them ever returned. His demon sword, Altine, the sacred symbol of his family passed down for generations, was lost in there with him. Even after half a century, adventurers are still diving into that death trap, hunting for that legendary blade. That noble Stefan von Lepanto Altian. He's got to be Claude's grandson. Relsia praises his so-called elegance, muttering how the guy's a legit knight even without a steed. Just then, the hulking brute's gaze drifts over to the Slayer elf, who's vibing with Stefan. Past them, his eyes land on Salon, the party's baby-faced priest, and he's low-key wondering if the kid can even cast a real holy spell. More than anything, he's still shook that Salon is a dude with a face that pretty, and he scans the area looking for a way to slide into a conversation with Todd. But with Todd and Salon already deep in conversation, there's no opening, which throws him back to how Todd used to chat him up, back in his own younger wizard days. Still, something feels totally off, making him wonder if Todd is into Salon. Nah, he thinks Todd's too stand-up for that. Out of nowhere, Edward starts gassing him up for being their guide, but Rifin just waves it off like it's nothing. He gets why the villagers were terrified to come here. Their fear makes total sense. But Edward, dripping with arrogance, just scoffs, claiming there's nothing to fear with the kingdom's finest knights on the job. The redhead feels his stomach churn with disgust, absolutely convinced all knights are self-important pricks, and that chivalry just breeds a bunch of narcissists. Suddenly, a blood-curdling shriek rips through the air, as shadowy creatures explode from the tree line in a full-blown ambush. As they surge forward, Reltia screams, calling them filthy beasts for daring to assault humans, blessed by the great Sayer. Without missing a beat, Stefan barks orders for his knights to form a line and repel the attack, while Todd unleashes a torrent of fire chains, sowing utter chaos as Salon chants a blessing, filling the soldiers with supernatural courage. Even in the madness, Stefan's prowess is on another level. The guy's swordplay is way more precise than he anticipated, but through a true fighter's lens, Rifin sees the sloppiness in his form. It all clicks. No wonder Master Gerard is so proud of him. The man's unbreakable. Just then, the rugged brawler spots a whole swarm of orcs, getting hunted down by the monsters, and he smashes one into pulp with a single devastating punch. He vaporizes it all, while wondering why the hell nobody gives a crap about the non-humans caught in the crossfire. For now, he's just a player trapped on the Jacquard Plains, stuck in Todd's twisted narrative. This is the exact spot where Ted the Guide is fated to die with Lord Stefan Altheon at the helm. And just like the story goes, Stefan is going berserk, a whirlwind of steel, slicing through monsters, completely oblivious to the safety of anyone around him. And that's why the Guide's fate makes a grim kind of sense. It reveals what a garbage person Stefan is. It's no shock at all that the Guide dies under his command. Amid the swirling chaos, Salon shouts for Rifin to duck behind a tree, a small flicker of human decency. A monster lunges its claws, swiping inches from Rifin's eye, and a raw yell escapes his lips. He throws a wild, desperate punch and feels the crunch of bone as he obliterates the creature, leaving the nearby orcs just staring, completely stunned. Stefan's only concern. He turns to Edward and asks if the wizard and priest are okay, a question that makes Rifin's blood boil. With a complete disregard for everyone else, Stefan roars that Altheon's command is law and orders them all to relax and savor their triumph. Seizing the moment, Rifin, playing the part of the humble guide, walks up to Todd and thanks him for saving his skin. Then he casually drops that a buddy of his, Rifinheart, is a wizard over at the Delphi Magic Tower and asks if Todd knows the name. The mage looks genuinely shocked that a mountain of a man could be friends with Rifinheart before suddenly calling him a sweet and lovely boy, which sends a massive wave of creep vibes down the beefcake's spine. Shaking it off, Rifin asks how his friend is holding up. Todd just says the kid is studying magic, in his own little way. When Rifin pushes, asking if anything weird's been happening, the mage suddenly starts gushing over Rifinheart's sharp nose, his jewel-like eyes and flawless skin radiating pure, unfiltered creep energy. The big guy immediately figures Todd's obsession is purely physical, though it feels different from Grandpa Gerard's. He has to fight the urge to just clock this weirdo, and instead demands to know about Rifinheart's actual personality and attitude. Todd shamelessly admits he couldn't care less about his thoughts or actions, practically drooling like a total perv. Right then, Salon pops up, asking if Rifin's hurt, but he just shrugs it off and tells the kid to go check on the orcs. The young priest starts healing them even as they insist they're okay, while the humans just scoff at the sight, muttering about wasting divine power on creatures like that. Ryfen watches and sees that Salon treats them more like injured pets than actual equals. And it hits him. The real problem is how fundamentally screwed up human values are. Getting non-human races their basic rights is going to be a long, brutal uphill battle. Just then, Stefan barks at the guide to get a move on, and a fresh wave of irritation hits Ryfen. But weirdly, he replies in a flat, robotic voice, telling them to make for the stream. The bizarre tone doesn't escape Stefan's notice. Hours later, the party is battered and bruised, having already faced a basilisk, a pack of dire wolves, and more than 20 ogres. They can't figure out how a mountain range this small could be crawling with so many monsters. While the rest of them are totally gassed, Ryfen is secretly loving every second of it as he marches them forward. He's deliberately avoiding the safer routes, giving them zero downtime. In his mind, knights are just arrogant show-offs. Priests are cluelessly stubborn, and wizards are petty, small-minded fools. Even trapped in this brawler's body, he knows he's a wizard through and through. He's leading them on the most direct path, so technically he isn't lying, or torturing them. Much. It finally dawns on Stefan why Sir Claude never made it back from this place. This tiny mountain range is an absolute death trap. Suddenly, one of the knights spots a faint glow up ahead, and as they draw closer, Edward triumphantly announces they've found them, the ancient ruins of Fulton. Todd points to the entrance, claiming it's totally safe, but Ryfen slams on the brakes, refusing to budge without a guaranteed escort back. Stefan has no choice but to agree, promising to protect their guide on the return trip, even though you can tell it's a promise he never intended to keep. That shady promise makes Ryfen's blood boil, but Stefan just whips out his blade, declaring that a legendary knight is buried beyond the gate, and they will honor him by seizing the demon's sword. As the group storms into the darkness, Ryfen knows his moment has come. It's time to execute his true mission in the ancient ruins of Fulton. This place now crawling with monsters, and the undead was once a standard military base during the Silver Age, but its technology was light years ahead of its time. So advanced, in fact, that it puts modern-day engineering to shame. It's been ages since he last explored this dungeon with Ciri. He remembers her telling him she heard a sylph whispering behind these very walls, a sound he was convinced was a hidden passage. Playing the part of a true Romeo, he once teased Ciri, telling her not to blush and promising a kiss as her reward for being brave. And even now, this tough-as-nails guy practically drools at the memory, still in disbelief that he had the nerve back then to pull a move like that with her right in the heart of a danger zone. His eyes now land on a cipher, a Libra-based code, mixed with the symbols for Aqua and Terra. They're jumbled in reverse, but he instantly knows the solution. Still, with his nerfed magic cracking, it is way harder than he remembers. And while his new body is jacked, his brain hasn't quite caught up yet. He pushes through anyway, slipping off his coat with a smirk. He's not about to mess up a piece of gear worth 10 silver coins. He starts a few warm-up stretches to test his limits when piercing screams rip through the air, completely catching him off guard. His first thought is that those idiots must have taken a wrong turn, but the screams are coming from a totally different direction, and that's when it clicks. This isn't just a secret passage, it's a direct shortcut to the third basement level. With the entrance now wide open, it means there's an unauthorized entry down below, and a sick feeling creeps into his gut. Then, the horrifying reality hits him. Fulton is still an active military facility. Its automated magic system is designed to unleash every defense mechanism imaginable, to obliterate intruders. Back in the day, he and Ciri only had to worry about their own section, but with the Altian crew stumbling around like clueless noobs, they could easily set off a trap. If that happens, they could all be sent plummeting down to the second basement floor, turning the entire situation into absolute chaos. Deep below, Lord Stefan watches in horror as Sir Thomas gets sliced in half by one of the traps. Heavy rhythmic thuds echo through the chamber as a colossal skeleton wielding a massive axe lumbers into view. One look tells Stefan it's a hopeless fight. This thing is armed with multiple blades and radiates an aura so demonic, it's clearly not a monster any mortal can just walk up to and defeat. Elsewhere, Silent is tending to the wounded soldiers. They thank him over and over, still trembling from the shock of the floor collapsing out from under them, a fall that nearly claimed all their lives. He gives a nod to Todd, thanking him for the clutch magic save, but Todd admits his spell only broke their fall. It won't shield them from the nightmare that's coming. Right on cue, a massive explosion blasts the frontline soldiers off their feet as a horned demon and its legion charge forward, sending the men scrambling in pure terror. But Father Silent strides forward, his mace glowing with holy light as he channels divine power into the terrified troops. He blesses them, infusing their hearts with unshakable courage. To him, their cowardice was pathetic. But now, they are surging with a righteous fury. They look almost possessed, screaming that they'll unleash the true might of the Knights of House Altian. Todd is floored, watching in disbelief as Silent pumps an insane amount of power into the men, basically whipping them into a berserker rage. Not to be outdone, Todd unleashes his own spell, roaring at them to reclaim what is theirs, magically ripping the demon's sword straight out of its grasp. At the same time, Relcia lunges at the demon commander, only to be swatted away like a fly. She hits the ground, hard, battered, and bruised. But she hopes her sacrifice bought Master Stefan an opening. Stefan roars his approval of her bravery and charges the demon lord, his blade a blur of motion, as he attacks like a true hero. Edward cheers for their leader, calling him a resolute warrior, while Stefan just snarls at the vile monsters, ordering everyone to keep their heads in the game. He reminds them that this is the very ground where the mighty knight Claude fell in battle. Suddenly, a torrent of fire erupts from above. A second demonic beast appears, letting out a deafening roar as it incinerates soldiers with a blast of hellfire. Our so-called hero shouts at them not to be afraid, telling them to harden their resolve as proud knights of House Altion. The battlefield descends into pure pandemonium, but Stefan refuses to yield an inch. He is absolutely not going to let these demons have their way. Roaring the name of Altion's resolute knight, he launches himself at the flame beast with a powerful shooting strike, only to be bitch-slapped aside and slammed into the ground. Brutally, he lies there unmoving. Father Silent steps up, unleashing a blast of holy light, but it's not nearly enough. Just as the demon rears back to crush Silent, Ryfin materializes out of thin air, knocking the monster backward and shielding the priest. With a single devastating punch, he obliterates the beast. Done. Just like that. The insane ease of the kill shocks him, triggering a flashback of how Tezron once decked him in the exact same way, in his past life. Shaking it off, he moves to get the wounded to safety, sweeping the injured elf up into his arms. But before he can even take a step, an entire legion of undead soldiers claws its way out of the ground. Ryfin holds her tight. He plows through the undead swarm, carving a bloody path while batting them away to clear an escape route. That's when the resolute knight finally stirs. Edward is the first to spot it. Stefan groggily pushes himself up, scanning the field of shattered undead, and asks what the hell just happened, only for his right-hand man to reveal their guide was actually a straight-up warrior. He immediately backpedals, apologizing for failing to recognize a supposed noble. But hold up. Our beefcake clocks that Todd knows his younger self from back in the magic tower. Quick thinking, he throws out the name Ryfin. Edward's totally baffled, saying he's never heard of any legendary champ with that name. And when pressed, Ryfin just flat-out admits he's got no noble blood. The light bulb finally goes off for Stefan. This warrior is just some commoner he mistook for a noble in training. And now, the damage control begins. He tries to play it off, thanking him for swooping in at the very end to finish up a job they already had in the bag. He even admits Ryfin has some skills, but our iron-fisted MC is having none of it and calls his bluff. He fires back that it looks like Stefan's fresh out of tricks and is just completely blind to reality. Oof. That one hits a nerve and Stefan snaps, demanding respect for House Altion. As Edward frantically tries to de-escalate, Stefan spits that some random drifter wouldn't know the first thing about proper etiquette. Stefan eventually simmers down and gets curious, asking Ryfin who his master is, but our guy just brushes it off, claiming he's self-taught. In reality, his mind flashes back to Grandpa Fist and the devastating technique he was taught. But with Master Gerard being a continent-wide legend, he can't afford that kind of attention or risk his old master discovering his location. Stefan is finding this whole story impossible to swallow. How could someone without any formal training be this much of a beast? Ryfin just shuts him down, telling him to focus on the wounded. Edward clocks the way this guy just naturally commands the room. He doesn't even seem to realize how arrogant he comes off, like a born leader who spent his whole life giving orders. The thought crosses his mind, maybe this absolute unit is foreign royalty. The age gap doesn't even seem to register, with Ryfin speaking to him like a seasoned veteran schooling a rookie, a fact that only deepens the mystery around him. Then, completely out of left field, Ceylon slides in, asking Ryfin for his exact height. The priest is 100% smitten with this walking mountain of a man, guessing he stands at 192 centimeters, though Ryfin confesses he has no idea what he actually weighs. Still thirsty for details, Ceylon presses him about his training regimen, but Ryfin's deadpan reply is that he just got his butt kicked a lot, ate a ton, and lifted a bunch of heavy stuff. He's getting seriously weirded out by how chummy Ceylon is all of a sudden. That's when Dylan, Phil Merrick's, chimes in, explaining that true warriors never spill the secrets to their power. As for Ceylon's backstory, after his parents died, he was raised in the Phillips Order orphanage, where his delicate build and pretty face basically put a giant target on his back. This ignited a deep-seated desire for everything he wasn't: brawny, loud, and deep-voiced. At one point, his obsession led him to dream of becoming a monk, thinking he could prove his faith through raw physical strength. Of course, reality had other plans for our pretty boy. He never shot up in height, his voice refused to drop, and his hair grew at a ridiculous rate. The harder he tried to get swole, the more his sacred energy skyrocketed from constantly healing his own torn muscles. This whole ordeal forged an intense admiration for rugged muscular physiques, which is totally giving Ryfin the creeps. He makes an excuse to go scout the exit, but the priest is dead set on tagging along. Ryfin shuts that down, ordering him to stay with the wounded soldiers in case of another attack, which makes Ceylon pout. Seeing an opening, Stefan decides to join him. He tells Relcha to hang back and help the others. On the way, Stefan is already muttering about having to get help from a boulder, clearly salty that Ryfen just volunteered without a care for the chain of command. Itching to prove he's the alpha, Stefan charges headfirst into a fight with the next demon they see. He's totally fishing for a compliment from our tank, but while he's lost in his own hype, bam! Ryfen drops him with a single chop to the neck. Just then, a wave of undead soldiers swarms in, and our ultimate bruiser mows them down without breaking a sweat, making the whole thing look like a cakewalk. With that handled, he's off on the real mission, treasure hunting, and he's finally reached the hotspot. He scans the area on the hunt for Silver Age relics worth at least 50 gold coins. It only takes a few moments before he spots it, the infinite sack. It's a legendary magical bag that can hold 10 times its own volume, and from what he remembers, there's another one, stashed right next to it, loaded with the Celestial Furnace, the Dagger of Recall, and the Sapphire of Magic Power. My guy is absolutely buzzing. This is a king's ransom. Just as Stefan starts to stir, Ryfen casually blames the undead for laying him out with one lucky shot. Lord Ego is absolutely livid that his moment of glory was stolen, but Ryfen's already plotting his next nap time. The so-called Great Knight ends up getting put to sleep 3 more times while our bruiser ransacks the entire ruin. He's low-key hoping the noble isn't seriously concussed. When Stefan finally wakes up for good, he's completely bewildered. He got decked even while being on high alert, and already planning which recovery potions he'd need. Meanwhile, Ryfen has stuffed the magic bag to its absolute limit and is already planning his next haul. Once the exits are secured, they start escorting the rest of the group to safety. Along the way, Silon corners Ryfen, saying it's pretty sus for a commoner to be so skilled. Ryfen then explains that his default tone of voice just makes everyone feel like they're beneath him, though he never imagined his blunt style would hit Edward, a 40-year-old dude, the same way it hits Lord Ego. It finally dawns on him that he's only 22, so maybe it's time to dial it back a notch, and apologizes for his directness, explaining he's not much of a people person. In the very next chamber, the crew stumbles upon a terrifying new demonic entity, the Grill Beast, a creature Ryfen has zero memory of from his past life. Stefan just assumes it's the local guardian, but our bruiser knows they are hopelessly outmatched and immediately urges a retreat. That's when their eyes lock onto the demon sword Altion clutched in the monster's grasp. Edward suggests they pull out and come back with an army, but the arrogant knight refuses to let the legendary blade be defiled by such a creature. He's determined to reclaim it, no matter the sacrifice, even if it leads to their utter annihilation. He commands his soldiers to charge forward, as the Iron Fist brands him a reckless idiot. A dimensional rift had shattered these ruins from the Silver Age, but their automated systems patched the holes by absorbing anything nearby. That's how this otherworldly creature was assimilated into the defense network, morphing into what everyone now calls a dungeon guardian. The demonic protectors roar at the intruders, but the reality is they were just chilling until these ruins snatched them up and put them to work without pay. The moment a creature syncs with the system, its power skyrockets, and Ryfen knows the demon that offed Sir Claude was an aura user. If this dungeon guardian is even tougher than Tegral, then it's in a completely different league. Still, Lord Ego just scoffs, telling his crew not to sweat a monster that's chained down. This tank tries to warn these goons that charging in is a death sentence, but Edward fires back that a wanderer like him couldn't possibly understand honor, arguing some things are worth dying for. Our guy just can't believe these morons who barely survived the grill honestly think they can take on the Grill Beast. Meanwhile, Pretty Boy is busy juicing up the soldiers with holy power, hyping them up for what is clearly a suicide run. The soldiers rush in drawn like moths to a demonic flame, only to be swatted aside like yesterday's trash. Just as our hard-headed friend predicted, they are nothing more than cannon fodder being served up for slaughter. Yet, Sir Useless keeps screaming about courage and the glory of House Altion as if his motivational speech could actually intimidate the demon. Ryfen has already clocked Stefan as the type who refuses to listen, but Sir Edward seems a bit more level-headed, so maybe all is not lost. At the same time, Lord Ego is zipping around the Grill Beast, landing pointless attacks. Pretty Boy unleashes a barrage of holy maces, putting on a one-man light show. Relchia then swoops in, landing a flawless blow that actually earns a compliment from Stefan. Ryfen has to admit she's second only to himself, way beyond Edward's level, and perhaps he misjudged this crew. Just then, Todd finally unleashes his magic, conjuring a massive blizzard, but the system glitches and triggers Phase 2. The Grill Beast shatters its restraints and lunges straight for the party, squashing soldiers like insects. The true nightmare has just begun. Lord Ego charges the demon, looking like he's about to deliver the final blow, only to get decked in the stomach and sent flying into a wall within seconds. Edward shrieks for his lord, but Stefan yanks Relcha back into the fray, just in time for her to get smacked down too right before the Grill Beast lobs a massive fireball at them. Ryfen dives in at the last second, to shield Pretty Boy, casually apologizing for his tardiness. Now he's finally sizing up the beast, questioning if his current body's martial arts are enough to take down a monster of this caliber. Back when he was a mage, He would have avoided such a high-stakes gamble, but the fighter inside him feels a surge of excitement at the chance to test his limits against a truly powerful foe. For the very first time, he feels like a genuine martial artist, thinking Gerard would be genuinely proud. He recalls Grandpa Fist's timeless lesson, when in doubt, throw the first punch. Unleashing a concentrated blast of energy, he dodges the grill beast's assault, but still gets nicked by the demon sword, realizing a magical weapon can injure him even when normal steel cannot. The beast punts him into a wall, and Pretty Boy screams his name in terror, but Ryfin just dusts himself off, telling him he's all good. Stefan's jaw is on the floor, absolutely shocked to see Ryfin's aura, confirming he's an aura wielder. Though if he'd just been patient, he could have landed a clean counterattack, but eating hits has practically become an instinct for this man, after all those brutal training sessions with Grandpa Fist. Deciding it's the perfect chance to sharpen his skills, he taunts the grotesque monster to come at him, and their battle violently shakes the ruins. Meanwhile, Lord Ego is practically gagging on his own pride, watching in utter disbelief that this commoner has an aura, while he, a highborn noble, could never awaken it. To him, the entire scene feels like a fever dream, leaving him to wonder who in the hell this guy is, and where this absolute unit of a man came from. The Dungeon Guardian Grill Beast unleashes its fury on Ryfin, the self-proclaimed King of Fists, but the ensuing brawl only highlights how much his training has paid off. Every one of the demon's attacks seems sloppy and obvious, allowing Ryfin to counter with ridiculous ease. The only issue is that these corrupted guardians refuse to die. The ruins endlessly pump them with magic, regenerating their injuries. The grill beast goes berserk, but the Iron Fist easily puts it in a lock. He shatters its jaw with some aerial combat practice, then transforms it into the ideal punching bag for his striking exercises. The rest of the party just watches completely speechless. This absolute unit is using the demon as his personal training dummy, but even Ryfin knows this game can't last forever. It's time to whip out the Calamity Horn and finish this with one epic blast. The demonic beast, sensing the danger, springs away from the ferocious warrior. Ryfin internally curses the audience watching them. They're a massive liability. One misstep could bring the entire cavern down on their heads. God screams in his head that if they juice up an aura-infused sword with holy power, they might just be able to obliterate this thing. Ryfin's already familiar with that little trick. The only problem is he admits he has no idea how to actually channel aura into a weapon. God nearly has an aneurysm at the thought that this meathead only ever runs aura through his own body. He calls Ryfin's entire sect a bunch of lunatics, while our boy continues to grapple with the grill beast. Pretty Boy Cylon chimes in, insisting his body is durable enough before unleashing a blessing on both Ryfin and the sword in the name of the Phylonance blessing. The holy energy surges through him like a bolt of lightning, firing him up to a whole new level. The bruiser lifts the demon as if it weighs nothing at all. He smashes the creature into the wall. As a holy strike blazes through the weapon, it suddenly dawns on him that Pretty Boy just cast a buff directly on his body. A holy strike, a spell meant for solid metal, was coursing through his flesh, and it actually worked. Cylon, completely unfazed, just lets the unhinged brawler go absolutely wild. So Ryfin charges in, delivering a jaw-cracking divine kick, immediately followed by a divine knee and a divine punch before launching the grill beast straight into the air. He finishes the demon off with spectacular flair. After the flashy execution, Pretty Boy is practically gazing at him with stars in his eyes. But Ryfin just grunts for Cylon to cancel the spell already. As the injured are being carried away, Sir Useless decides to speak up. He claims Ryfin concealed his true strength far too well. He concedes that the man is powerful, but whines that his knightly honor has been trampled into the dust. He accuses Ryfin of sneering at them while they struggled. Ryfin just shrugs it off, stating he never sneered. The truth is, he's so unbothered he couldn't even be bothered. Stefan totally loses his cool and charges, but the bruiser just ducks out of the way. He lets Sir Useless trip over his own wild swing like an absolute clown. The fool screeches, "How dare a musclehead like you dodge me?" Ryfin calmly states he never sneered, and tells the guy to just take the sword if it means that much to him. Edward, being the voice of reason, points out that for a man to show no greed for such a valuable weapon is a true sign of his strength. Stefan grips the blade, fuming even more. The knight has no idea our guy thinks the sword is a second-rate piece of junk compared to what he used to mass-produce. Back in his prime, he forged legendary weapons for other races. Done with all the drama, he tells everyone it's time to head back, and they fall in line. The whiny knight, however, continues to stew in his own resentment. Back at Cattle Village, a wave of relief washes over the people as Father Cylon heals a small baby. Pretty Boy plays the part of both healer and philanthropist, curing the sick and tossing gold coins to the villagers like it's candy. The kid definitely knows how to run a PR campaign. He's doing a fantastic job building up the Holy Order's public image. Meanwhile, Lord Useless sulks off with his men to some other town. Sir Useless proposes they investigate Ryfin, and Edward agrees, seeing as the bruiser's overwhelming power clearly has Stefan completely fixated. Of course, the clown refuses to admit he's the weaker man. At the same time, Ryfen plans to head out and find Sirius, but can't understand why Pretty Boy is still tagging along. Cylon explains that he's choosing the life of a traveling priest to spread the goddess's grace across the land. He plans to minister to believers, fully aware that most priests who choose this path die on the road. He was originally supposed to return to the Holy Order, but he decided to become a pilgrim instead. Then his whole vibe gets a little creepy as he asks if he can travel with the single strongest person he's ever seen. Ryfen immediately recognizes that look. It's the exact same one he used to get from Gerard or Todd. The way he's sizing up his physique is just off. The bruiser sighs, thinking he's cursed to be a magnet for absolute weirdos. Still, the Pretty Boy seems decent enough, so a polite rejection should work, until the gears in Ryfen's head click and he remembers Cylon is a cleric. The ultimate walking first aid kit. Having him around might not be such a terrible idea in case Sirius gets hurt. While the bruiser is hyped to finally see Sirius again, Pretty Boy won't stop pestering him with a million questions about his training regimen. He's asking for tips on how to train his upper, middle, and lower abs. The only advice Ryfen can offer is to get beaten up on a regular basis, and to haul massive boulders around, though he does recall an alchemist once bragging about some kind of muscle-boosting potion. It was called protein, an idea which Cylon instantly dismisses as ridiculous. Meanwhile, back at his mansion, the heir to the Charon trade union Lord Wynalot is absolutely losing his mind over his elf's training. He rants that elves are supposed to serve their masters in both body and soul. His butler can only beg for his forgiveness. But Wynalot rages that this defective elf was bought cheap as a slave and still wasn't worth the price. Sirius rises from the bed, declaring that she was born this way with the very eyes he finds so annoying. Wynalot furiously orders his butlers to go and purchase a proper one. Even if it's expensive, he doesn't need a so-called broken product in his mansion. He commands them to return her. Back to the Chetan Principality's infamous elf slave market Elfenheim, that same elven girl designated as number 148 ends up back on the auction block for the third time. Up in the far north sits the Chetan Principality, a nation of commerce that thrives on the Juran River, a river that cuts directly through its territory. Ryfen and Pretty Boy finally arrive in Zeppelin, the capital city, and the very heart of all trade. The streets are buzzing with the energy of countless merchants. Cylon isn't surprised. It's exactly the scene he expected from the continent's #1 city of commerce. Ryfen explains that this entire city was founded by merchants who carved out a piece of land from the Grim Kingdom. It's no surprise that everything here is driven by money and status. He's certain his sister is hiding somewhere within these walls. Cylon pleads with him to ease up, claiming the big guy is just flexing his long legs to show off. In that very moment, an old man is on his knees begging a hulking thug named Tarek for mercy. The brute accuses him of bad-mouthing the Rolafame trade union and proceeds to pummel the poor man 30 times. Afterward, he casually flips 30 gold coins at him as if it's payment. Cylon dashes over to aid the elder, frantically searching for any city guards, but finds the old man calmly gathering the coins from the ground. He insists it's all right as the money will help him get established here. Cylon is absolutely aghast that the man acts like nothing happened, simply because he was paid off. But Ryfen just reminds him that, like he said, money is the only thing that talks in this city. Ryfen had believed his extensive travels had prepared him for anything, but he'd never witnessed a city where every crime is just settled with a cash payment instead of jail time, provided you have deep enough pockets. Cylon is floored, demanding to know what business a powerhouse like Ryfen could possibly have in such a corrupt place. Ryfen nonchalantly tells him he's here to purchase an elf. Cylon freezes on the spot, utterly horrified by the kind of man he's teamed up with. The big guy starts to panic, fumbling for an explanation, knowing he can't exactly reveal the truth about his past life. Silas, on the other hand, is just disgusted by all men, but the redhead fires back, reminding him that he's a man too. Meanwhile, the hulking thug Tarek is bragging to his elven servants that anyone who complains about the Rolafame trade union just needs to work harder, because running their mouth in the streets will only get them a handful of coins. The goon is flanked by elves on all sides, all nodding along to his garbage philosophy. Abruptly, Tarek catches sight of Lord Beret strolling by, and grills him about the Slayer elf he purchased not long ago. Beret's expression sours as he admits he returned her 2 weeks back, for being disobedient. The massive brute roars with laughter, mocking him for being too feeble to domesticate an elf slave. No wonder, he sneers, you can't even crack the top 10 trade unions. Beret snaps back that plenty of other people have returned that same Slayer elf, which is precisely why she was sold so cheap. Tarek just grins, already plotting a trip to Elfenheim to snatch her up, just to see the miserable look on Beret's face. Ryfen later finds the scrawny Cylon working out again, puzzled as to why the kid is still so thin. After putting in so much effort, he tells the pretty boy not to overdo it or he'll just be crippled with soreness. But Cylon instantly heals himself with a flick of his wrist like it's nothing. That's when the realization hits Ryfen. Healing magic is essentially just turning back time. So rather than building muscle through the natural cycle of strain and recovery, Pretty Boy is just hitting a reset button on his body. This absolute blockhead has wasted 5 years making zero gains. The big guy promises to teach him a legitimate training method down the road, and then casually wonders if his long hair ever gets in his way. Salon just shrugs, mentioning that it just grows back freakishly fast anytime he gets it cut, which makes Rifen wonder what on earth is going on inside that empty head to fuel that kind of growth. Shaking it off, Rifen announces he has enough cash to visit the slave auction, and that Salon is coming along. The auction house is swarming with all sorts of slaves, but the elves are undeniably the star attraction, fetching a much higher price than orcs or dwarves thanks to their otherworldly beauty and incredibly long lifespans. This keeps them in their youthful prime for decades. A Slayer elf can be sold for 800 gold coins, whereas a standard female elf goes for 300 and a young girl for around 100, with a young male selling for a mere 30. Orcs are a complete bargain by comparison. An orc swordsman costs 10, a basic orc laborer 5, and even an infant orc is just 4 or 5 coins. There's virtually no market for adult male elves due to their alarmingly high rate of suicide, but elves as a whole are still wildly popular because their beauty and longevity keep them looking young far longer than any other race. There's even a dark running gag that only a complete fool would invest in a baby elf, since the merchant would likely die of old age, long before ever seeing a return on his investment. Salon clarifies that Elfenheim is an auction house specializing exclusively in elves, with over 300 years of so-called tradition. Rifen, meanwhile, is disgusted that such a vile place could be called the paradise of elves. The pretty boy confesses he's never attended an elf auction, but just assumed they were treated better than orcs, only for Rifen to state the obvious: they're still slaves and he doubts any of them are truly happy. Salon counters that the elves might have it better now than when they were starving in the wild, but Rifen knows that's just a human rationalization. True power is the only thing that commands respect. He's already formulating a plan for a new type of empire, not a dark one, but a nation where all the non-human races can finally live without fear. Shortly after, the auctioneer presents the prized slayers of Elfenheim, whose stunning beauty makes the pretty boy blush. The old man running the show wonders why this brute would bring a young lady to a slave auction. Seeing these forest fairies, descendants of a great spirit, being showcased like merchandise sickens Rifen. He nevertheless asks for a slayer with a darker skin tone. The man teases him for having exotic tastes, and launches into a sales pitch about the elves' strict diets and training until Rifen bluntly cuts him off, and insists on seeing the elf for himself. Finally, he is led to number 148, a slayer in training who has not yet reached maturity, and it guts him to see his Sirius so utterly broken. He flashes back to a time she laid into the mage Riffenhart for mixing a volatile fire plant with a seed rock, just moments before the entire lab went kaboom. The old arch-wizard just pouted, insisting he was on the verge of a massive breakthrough. The stunning elf clapped back that he'd pulled the exact same stunt yesterday and incinerated everything then too. Still, she couldn't deny how strangely adorable he looked even at his age as she wiped the soot from his clueless face. Riffenhart pleaded with her to drop the formal sir and just use his name, but she shot him down without an explanation. All the while, the world outside was descending into chaos, swallowed by flames. Then King Lepenarth himself marches into the gallery, flanked by 4 of his deadliest warriors. Tathid was there to pay his final respects, while the king's gaze swept over Atilka, Marshalon, and Sirius, asking why they all looked like they were at a funeral. It wasn't the first time he'd seen men staring down death's door. Across the entire continent, humanity had mustered a colossal army 2 million strong. They were about to gamble everything they had to finally dethrone the Demon King, their ultimate nemesis. He couldn't help but wonder how they'd ever pick up the pieces, if the nations were truly willing to obliterate themselves in a single desperate battle, all because they couldn't stand the existence of another race. Tathid begs his king to escape with them, but Lepenarth flatly refuses, declaring he'll be their shield so they have a shot at getting out. He also turns to Alpoth, asking for his forgiveness. Despite having a prophecy from the gods themselves, he still managed to lose everything. The dwarf corrects him, calling it an oracle, but Lep just shrugs, same difference. The message foretold that he should keep an elf by his side, follow the orc who blazed the trail, and that a figure who had conquered the Diamond Abyss, one fated to shatter. The Pillar of Hawcrawl would emerge to rewrite his destiny and bring them salvation. Back in the day, the arch-wizard was completely floored when a bunch of dwarves suddenly started hailing him as their savior just because he'd vaporized half of their sacred sanctuary. Even now, the logic still escapes him. With a blessing from Alpoth, Michelin prays they will meet again, a hope that King Lepenarth shares with all his heart. In that moment, Riffenhart pleaded for Atilka and Tathid to survive and urged Sirius to flee with them, but she vowed she would wait for him no matter what. He told her to find a good man if he didn't make it back, but her devotion was unshakable, which completely melted the old arch-wizard, who pulled her into one final desperate hug. Now back in the grim present, the slave trader practically sneers as he presents her, calling her a defective, uneducated product that's already been sent back 3 times. She has skills, he admits, but a venomous personality. She's branded as inferior, used as a twisted training tool for other elves, by forcing them to practice on living things. The auctioneer smirks, asking if this muscle-bound freak is seriously interested. Seeing his bizarre taste, he jacks up the price to 300 gold coins. The pretty boy scoffs, asking why she's so cheap. The old man just repeats that she's damaged goods. When Sirius is finally shoved in front of her new owner, all Riffenhart can think is, "What kind of hell did you endure to earn these scars?" The seller offers to summon a priest, but he just tells Silent to handle the healing. Riffenhart gently drapes his own coat over Sirius's trembling shoulders, murmuring that it's cold out. Then he asks softly, "Is it all right if I call you Sirius?" She agrees with a dead, hollow voice, so he tries to soften the moment, giving her a full name, Sirius Valencia. She immediately argues that a slave has no need for a surname. She asks if it's his, but he clarifies that the name is hers and hers alone to carry from this day forward, not his. He finally introduces himself as Riffenhart and gestures to the pretty-faced Silent, identifying him as a priest of philanthropy. A short while later, the seller is sweating bullets as an enraged customer slams into his shop, roaring about why number 148 was sold just an hour ago. Tariq is paranoid that Burr must have discovered his scheme to get her back. The seller stammers that the buyer was some new face, a young man who paid in cold hard cash on the spot. Burke is in disbelief. Who in their right mind carries that kind of coin for a slave? The old man boasts that he even sold the so-called inferior product for a premium price. When pressed for a description, he says the buyer was some massive, brawny dude who should be easy to spot in a crowd. Meanwhile, Riffenhart is busy trying to find new clothes for Sirius, picking out an outfit he thinks is perfect for her, and promising they'll get more later. He asks if she's hungry, but her reply is ice cold. "I will do only as my master commands." Riffenhart instantly tells her not to view him as a master. Her eyes widen in panic. "Does that mean you're returning me?" Sirius simply cannot compute this man who covers her with his coat, dresses her in fine garments, and treats her like she's an actual human being. Riffenhart tells Sirius it would be better to see him as a fellow traveler, a comrade, not a master, and to just call him by his name. Her mind instantly concludes it's some bizarre form of roleplay, like he's some perverted adventurer acting out a hero fantasy with his new sword slave. She settles on the formal title of Sir Riffenhart, still utterly convinced that all humans are the same kind of garbage. Later, as Sirius wolfs down her meal like a wild animal, the rugged man points out that Redanti's Grace is the most famous dining establishment in all of Zeppelin, since the goddess Redanti is the deity of the earth, and the harvest serving a meal here is considered an act of worship. The pretty boy retorts that if it's an act of worship, then the food ought to be free. Riffenhart fires back that Philon's religion makes a killing off of beauty anyway. Father Silent has to concede that he has a point. She is the goddess of beauty and love after all, and her priests certainly charge a hefty sum in gold for their services. He just lets it go. Across the table, the mountain of a man smirks as he watches Sirius absolutely demolish her food like a starving animal, and the intensity of his gaze totally freaks her out. He wonders if she despises this place now, the very same spot he brought her, to celebrate the day they first met. He was her hero back then. Now, he's just the man who bought her. The whole vibe is night and day. He questions if fate messed up, throwing them together when the timing was all wrong. Still, he clings to a sliver of hope that one day, his true feelings will get through to her, and for the moment, that has to be enough. Later at the armory, Sirius's hand instinctively finds the hilt of a sleek rapier. The big guy points out that she normally wields a scimitar. She flashes him a look that could kill, wondering how the hell this stranger knows her fighting style. The pretty boy Ceylon jumps in, puffing his chest out and bragging that any true warrior can tell just by someone's hands. He's completely starstruck though, holding a mithril weapon he's only ever dreamed of. Rifen immediately shuts that down flatly, stating that priests have no need for blades before they can even start to bicker. Just then, a crew of sketchy-looking men rolls up on Rifen, clearly not there to make friends. When pushed, their leader reveals that a certain noble wants that elf. He even offers a trade a proper slayer for the girl, flashing a bill of exchange. But the rugged man gives him a hard no, flatly repeating that he's not interested. The shady crew figures he's just gotten attached and decides to bounce. Salon just thinks the whole encounter was super weird. Later, at a lavish mansion, a lord named Tarek is absolutely ripping into his lackey Romad for failing the mission. He yells that he should have at least tossed a few coins at the guy. After beating him to a pulp, Romad explains that the clueless dude wouldn't sell at any price, and with too many witnesses around, it wasn't a good time to go full-on villain. He vows to find the perfect opportunity to snatch the slayer and fake her death, promising to offer double what was paid a bargain, considering she was sold for dirt cheap. Tarek loves the sound of this scheme. He orders Romad to drag Sir Lantis into it, since that freeloader has been sitting around collecting a paycheck for doing absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, our hero is counting out the 2,000 gold he'd set aside, pleasantly shocked that he has a ton of cash left over. It's nowhere near what he needs to rebuild his empire, but investing it is way smarter than carrying it around. That's when a chilling memory hits him, the Great Famine. A disaster that's about to slam the agricultural nation of Provence and all its neighbors. See, Rodante's land is so ridiculously fertile that its harvests are always massive, so nobody ever even thinks about preparing for a famine. But he knows the coming spring will bring mass starvation, a hunger so profound that parents will resort to eating their own children. That horrifying vision cements his decision. He has to invest in grain right now. He weighs his options, Rolofane, Karen, and Tauban, but instantly dismisses Rolofane, remembering their disgusting, pervy leader, and what he did to Cyrus in his past life. That leaves Tauban, the continent's third biggest grain union, and a major competitor to Rolofane. Over at the Tauban headquarters, its leader Savolt is fuming. He just got intel that Rolofane is dumping a massive supply of wheat and barley, for half the usual price, and he's calling them out for their senseless, dirty tactics. He's panicking about losing his trade partners and needs to fix the market instability as soon as possible. Right then, his assistant announces a visitor who wants to make an investment. The leader just scoffs. He assumes it's just some small-timer who will cause more problems, but his entire attitude flips when he hears the man is offering 1,500 gold coins for grain. He sits down for a meeting with Ryfin, who lays out his proposal. The deal will happen in the Crovin's kingdom, right around the spring barley harvest. Savolt just shakes his head, saying that selling grain there is like trying to sell water to a fish. It's a guaranteed failure. Ryfin fires back that if it fails, it's his loss, but if it hits, Savolt gets a massive payday too. Even with that carrot dangled, the leader refuses to bankroll what seems like a doomed plan and tells him to seriously reconsider. But our guy plays hardball, threatening to take his mountain of gold to a rival union. The trader immediately folds. He's not happy though, grumbling that his union is already on thin ice. All he wants is to survive these brutal economic times and maybe even thrive. So he urges Ryfin one last time to pick a safer bet. But Ryfin knows this guy was just as hard-headed in his past life. So of course our iron-willed hero insists it's his money and his call. He's ready to sign the contract on the spot, but not before giving Savolt a cold warning not to skim a single coin for himself. With that clear, Ryfin confirms that the Tauban Trade Union operates a branch in the northern Graham Kingdom. He then asks if there happens to be one near Delphia's legendary Mage Tower. The man explains that he'll have to cut through Delphia to get to their Ronta branch anyway. A sly look crosses Ryfin's face as he asks if the union leader could maybe pull some strings and dig up some info on someone in that region, clearly planning to use this deal to hunt down news about Ryfinhard. Elsewhere, Salon is just watching in awe as Cirrus practices with her weapon, her movements impossibly slick. It's almost like she's performing for a crowd. The blade in her hand triggers a flood of memories, her mother's voice telling her of the High Elves, who were once the sacred guardians of the forest, living in pure bliss under the world tree Elfenheim. They were in harmony with every living creature, sustained by the tree's endless bounty until humanity's greed forced them into a miserable existence. Her mother held fast to the belief that their goddess Eldia would one day guide them back to that lost paradise, and she begged Cirrus to never forget the pride of being descended from the great fairy. Then a much harsher memory follows, some bitter, old elf woman sneering that at least her pretty face would get her sold to a decent master. So she was expected to act like a perfectly obedient, polite little elf. Instead, Cyrus was pummeled, starved, and ridiculed for her pure-blooded high elf lineage, her own heritage treated like a stain. The thing that pulled her through wasn't some act of kindness. It was the sword. Every adult from her past wielded one, embracing a dignified death in battle, and through the blade, she could faintly picture her parents' proud silhouettes. Those memories have faded over the years, but one truth still smolders deep in her heart. Her mother's final command that their precious daughter must never, ever forget her pride. After that display, Salon is totally blown away by Cyrus's sick moves, but when Cyrus just says she gives it her all, Salon groans that it's the same lame line Ryfin used. She starts to wonder if all martial arts nerds are this boring. She tries to show off her own technique, but a crew of sketchy dudes led by some guy named Romad interrupts. He oozes in, claiming they're just taking the elf girl back to her real master, which is apparently him, the shady weirdo. He's dead set on dragging Cyrus off to her supposed owner, but Father Ceylon steps in, demanding to know who they are. Romad sneers, telling them not to bother screaming for help, because they've already taken care of any potential witnesses. Pretty Face fires back, shouting that they aren't selling her. So, what's with the heavy-handed approach? Without warning, a goon lunges at Ceylon, calling him a little pest. But Cyrus is faster, blocking the blade just in the nick of time, before she launches herself into the mob, dropping them one by one. Romad is just left standing there, completely stunned, unable to process how an elf slave could be this powerful. That's when Pretty Face tells Philonins to introduce these disrespectful punks to their iron mace. In a flash, the Slayer elf saves Ceylon from a fatal stab by Romad, who just laughs, saying no one would even notice if a young pilgrim vanished. Ceylon is livid, but Cyrus steps forward, her voice calm, as she says she'll deal with this. Romad then calls for Talcata, his orc enforcer, telling him it's time to go to work. The massive orc actually apologizes to Cyrus, saying there's nothing personal about this. This is just how things are, so she should probably just give up. Talcata even admits her skills are way beyond the humans he's used to squashing. Romad, the absolute creep, shouts at him not to damage the goods, so the orc switches from punching to grabbing. Cyrus desperately weaves between his heavy-handed attacks, bitterly wishing she hadn't left her scimitar in her room. Romad absolutely loses it, screaming at the orc for being unable to catch one girl, while Talcata just gripes that this means he's missing dinner. Tonight, furious, he charges again, but this time Cyrus meets him head-on and actually throws the massive orc off balance. The moment she stops dodging, the orc panics, afraid he'll actually hurt her, which hilariously creates the exact opening she needs to land a solid blow. Talcata is horrified, thinking he almost turned her into paste, completely missing that Cyrus had been counting on his self-control the entire time. Right then, Father Ceylon calls out, asking if the Slayer elf can dodge, throwing knives. She vaguely remembers doing it once, so he takes her at her word and begins to channel his magic. Romad, completely enraged, flings a dagger straight at Ceylon. Cyrus bats it out of the air, giving the priest the precious seconds he needs to finish his incantation and gleefully smash the villain. A massive explosion erupts, and Ceylon takes off running, shouting that divine power is only effective against demons and the undead, but it's a good distraction for them to escape. Cyrus doesn't even bother to listen. She just snatches him up like he's a grocery bag and makes a flying leap straight through a window. The weirdo orders Talcata to pursue them, but that's when Cerlantis finally takes notice of the clown show, still failing to capture one elf girl. He can't believe Romad is fumbling this hard even with an orc for backup. He's actually impressed watching a supposed elf slayer go toe-to-toe with a veteran orc. The old man decides he's seen enough, launching himself into the air in a single bound. Romad is floored by the jump, instantly realizing this geezer is an aura user. The old man himself looks thrilled, ready to turn this chase into a game of hide-and-seek. Elsewhere, Father Ceylon is trying to convince Cyrus they need to circle back for their equipment. Cyrus bluntly points out that the thugs will be camped out there. Ceylon argues that taking on one or two goons is a better bet than trying to survive with only a single dagger between them. Of course, the Slayer elf just sees a naive kid talking a big game. As if on cue, a thug pokes his head into their hiding spot, only to have his face instantly rearranged by one of Cyrus's lightning-fast kicks. Pretty Boy slides in right after yelling at them to grab their stuff and get out. With no time to change, he casts a quick prayer to hide their presence, totally unaware that a far greater threat is now hunting them. Cerlantis is a master swordsman, one who has achieved the legendary Great Stage and awakened his powerful aura. He already senses their strategy to lay low in the room. Using his aura, the geezer can pinpoint every living soul within 30 meters, as if he has X-ray vision. But Cerlantis never imagined the priest kid could completely cloak his presence, with the skill of a high-ranking cleric. When he finds the room deserted, he assumes they've already fled. When Romad, the slimy weirdo, has the nerve to ask if he just let them slip by, the old man just snaps at him to release the hunting hounds, certain they're still close. Meanwhile, Cyrus suggests they lose themselves in the crowded streets. Ceylon calls her an idiot, stressing that if anyone finds out they're runaway slaves, the entire city will turn against them. It finally dawns on him why so many pilgrims end up dead, realizing just how sheltered he was in the Holy Order. The idea of being dragged back sends a wave of pure terror through him, not in this fragile body, not with that woman waiting to get her hands on him again. Missing Ryfin with a desperate ache, Ceylon sends a frantic prayer into the cosmos, begging for a miracle at this turning point in his life. You might think two people meeting is just chance, but when the god Philemon has a hand in it, nah, that's pure destiny. Father Ceylon feels kinda weird using a sacred spell meant for matchmaking like this. A moment later, Pretty Face is hyping up Cyrus for her raw power. He admits he's met another Slayer elf, Relcia, but Cyrus is on a whole different level. In that moment, Cyrus really sees Ceylon for the first time. This kid acts way too much like a top-tier cleric for his age, and Pretty Boy is genuinely stunned that talking to the Slayer elf feels just like talking to a human. He wonders if she's a one-of-a-kind case as they finally arrive at their destination, only to discover some sketchy old man has been shadowing their every move. Cerlantis steps out, thanking the kids for the warm-up. His warning is ice cold: don't run. Fleeing just gives him a better target. The Slayer elf makes her call. She's going to carve a path straight through the enemy in front of her. She blitzes forward, and the old man instantly recognizes she's no rookie. She's poured blood, sweat, and tears into honing her blade, something unheard of for a slave. The impact of their clash rattles Cyrus to the bone. This isn't some back-alley thug, he's a swordsman with the skills of a knight. Ceylon's mind races. Why would someone this strong be involved in such a dirty business? Wasting no time, he unleashes a torrent of prayers, blessing the Slayer elf's weapon with the might of giants. eyes of a hawk, legs of a bull to bring this monster down. But now it's Sir Lantis, who's shook, seeing this kid casually casting high-level holy magic. That's bishop-level power. Cylon roars that he was a major figure down south in the Vasily Kingdom. He screams at the Slayer to wreck this old jerk. Lantis is caught off guard. With a cleric backing her, Cyrus is like a completely different fighter. Just as Cyrus lunges for the final blow, her sword suddenly shatters into a million pieces, leaving her completely stunned. The old man just chuckles. He reveals her fighting spirit was only high because he was toying with her the whole time. Father Cylon's face goes ghost white as he finally senses the overwhelming pressure. Lantis is an aura user. The priest can't process it. Why would a master of that caliber waste his energy hunting down a single elf slave? It's like calling in an airstrike to light a barbecue. The shady merchant shows up just as Lantis corners them, and that's when it all clicks for Father Cylon. He gasps the name Lantos von Kalpenard, the legendary knight of the Taken Kingdom. The old man is floored that this kid actually knows who he is. A noble by birth, Lantos awakened his aura in his late 30s and absolutely blew the kingdom away with his insane fighting skills. They threw parades for the new aura user, but behind that shining glory was a disgusting secret, an unspeakable fetish for elf slaves. It spiraled out of control, corrupting the royal city and the nobility itself. The man once praised as a hero is now known as the single greatest disgrace in the history of the Taken Kingdom. Cylon just explodes, screaming that the old man is a monster. You've been hiding in the Principality of Chaton all this time. He's fuming. They used to tell stories. If a woman walked alone at night, Lantis would come for her. Cyrus is disgusted that an aura user could sink to such a depraved level. Lantis just brushes it all off. He claims he's just trying to make a living off his salary. He casually admits to slaughtering countless people back in the Taken Kingdom before he skipped town. He even whines that he hasn't gotten to play tag in ages. Romad cuts in arguing that Lantis's psycho reputation doesn't matter when you have the power of an aura user on your side. From the Roll of Fame's perspective, it's a win-win. This vile man handles their dirty work, gets to live out his sick fantasies, and even gets paid for it. With an aura user as their trump card, the Roll of Fame trade union has exploded in power over the last 10 years. They've clawed their way up to become the second largest company in the entire Principality of Chaton. And now Lantis moves to silence Pretty Boy for good. Knowing how dangerous a high-ranking cleric's incantations can be, he lunges for Cylon while Romad screams at him not to damage the elf. Or Tarek will be furious. The old man just shrugs it off, saying they can always grab another cleric to patch her up later. He then decides he'll take the good-looking one with them. Romad mutters that the fetish geezer is a total creep, while Cylon yells that he's a man. Lantis just smirks, calling it a novel experience and promising to take very good care of the little one. Pretty Face finally snaps, warning Romad not to lay a single finger on him. Then, to everyone's utter shock, Cylon staggers to his feet. His tendons have been severed, making him look like the world's most beautiful broken zombie. The creeper just growls that they'll have to chop off his limbs. But before he can take a step, a massive explosion blows the entire area apart. A furious voice rips through the settling smoke, and it's Ryfin Heath roaring at them for daring to lay their hands on Cyrus. With Ryfin's explosive entrance, the entire room freezes. Even Sir Lantis pauses to size him up instantly, realizing this rugged brute is no ordinary young man. The old man can feel a suffocatingly heavy aura just pouring off him. When he asks who this is, Romad, the shady merchant, scoffs that he's just some random dude. The one who bought the elf slave. Lantis can't believe it. His every instinct is screaming that this guy spells danger. And yet this idiot merchant is calling Ryfin a random kid. If Lantis, an aura user himself, can't get a read on the guy's power level, then Ryfin Heath has to be one too. Ryfin completely ignores the crushing tension, simply turning to Father Cylon and thanking him for protecting Cyrus. The old creeper glares at the bold newcomer. Guessing he's in his late 30s, Lantis admits it's been a long time since he's had the chance to fight someone this strong. Ryfin just fires back, telling the pervy old geezer to stop pretending he's some noble knight when he's nothing more than filth. The brute is unleashed. A thunderous crash rocks the entire room as Iron Fist plows forward, his fists a relentless storm. The brawl instantly spirals into absolute mayhem. Romad, the sketchy mastermind, starts to freak out, screaming at his goons that they'll be vaporized if they get caught in that whirlwind. While Ryfin has the creep on lockdown, Cyrus quietly slides up to the healer, asking if her master is for real an aura user. Salon just lets out a heavy sigh, hitting her with a classic, "I told you so." Lantis is getting visibly tilted, realizing these skills are way too clean for someone who just awakened their power. Then in a flash, the creeper vaults into the air for a decisive blow, catching Ryfin totally off guard. But the boulder fires back with a vicious bullet punch, forcing the old geezer to admit this guy's mastery over aura is on another level. That realization leaves him with only two possible conclusions. Either this absolute unit of a tank unlocked his aura in his teens, or he's secretly over 40 years old hiding it all behind a youthful face. Both theories are completely nonsensical, which only fuels the creep's rage as he lunges forward with his blade. But the brute gives him zero breathing room. He's absolutely seething, trying to wrap his head around how this depraved knight is so powerful and can wield a sword with such deadly precision, especially after laying his disgusting hands on Cirrus. The boulder has one mission: put this creep in the ground. He completely dismisses the knight's smug lecture about martial arts building character. The tension skyrockets and Lantis almost chokes. When the brute nonchalantly parries his sword strike with a bare arm, floored, the creep demands to know if he's a student of the legendary martial king Gerard. Ryfin doesn't even grace him with an answer. Lantis then presses him, sneering why someone so formidable would care so deeply about a mere slave. And that was the trigger. Hearing Cirrus reduced to a slave ignites Ryfin's fury. Slaves have feelings, he bellows. And they have a will to live. He demands to know if the geezer has ever bothered to speak to one or even ask why they wear chains in the first place. The furious exchange continues, but the creep is just baffled by what he considers utter nonsense. In his world, and in Ryfin's past life, non-humans were always considered lesser beings, an unshakable truth hammered into the human psyche. They see these otherworldly races laugh, cry and live just like them, yet they will die on the hill that those beings are soulless. The brute roars that other races experience joy and sorrow, exactly like humans do. So, how does that make them deserving of a life in bondage? The creep scoffs back that it is simply the natural order. Ryfin explodes, screaming, then why are the descendants of the great fairies born into this world wearing shackles? He throws it in his face that if humanity wasn't on top, they'd be the ones enslaved. The enraged warrior keeps pummeling him, shouting that humans enslaved the orcs, then the dwarves, then the elves, celebrating each conquest as a glorious victory. When you justify chains for others, he snarls, you're inviting them for yourself. The knight recoils, horrified that Ryfin would dare speak of elves as equals to humans. But our guy just roars that Cirrus is not a slave, and launches himself at the old villain, who barely scrambles out of the way. He rants that the entire continent is built on a system of chains, where even powerless humans exist as half-slaves under serfdom. Rotten ideologies always come back to haunt you, but fools are too blind to see it. He grinds the knight's face into the dirt with his boot, snarling that if this system continues, everyone will one day live in fear of wearing those same chains. With a fire blazing in his gaze, the brute declares that things are going to change no matter what it takes. Lantis trembles as Ryfin smashes a fist deep into his gut. The blow forces him to vomit blood, right before he's blasted clean through a solid wall. He swears an oath that no one will ever call Cirrus or anyone else a slave in his presence again. Cirrus just watches her jaw completely unhinged, wondering if this man is a hero or just dangerously insane. Her mind flashes back to Ryfin, screaming that the Slayer elf was not property, and she remembers thinking he was just some unhinged psycho. All his impassioned speeches about talking to slaves like they were people, questioning the very system of their enslavement. His warnings that humans could be next had sounded like some delusional fantasy. She even wondered if he was just another creep with a strange fixation. But when he spoke of the descendants of the great fairies being born into servitude, it struck a chord deep within her, making her confront her own lineage. Meanwhile, from beneath the wreckage, Sir Lantis pathetically begs the brute to save him. Ryfin just sneers, and why would I ever rescue a piece of garbage like you? The perverted knight swears on his blade that he will atone, promising to dedicate his life to good deeds. His expression is dead serious. But Ryfin isn't buying a word of it. He spits, declaring his hatred for the Seer Holy Order, where filth like him commit endless sins, only to have them conveniently washed away at the temple. The brute says if this creep is serious about repentance, he needs to turn himself in, instead of seeking a spiritual get-out-of-jail-free card. Lantis immediately vows to surrender, saying he won't stain Ryfin's hands any further. Our guy claps back that his hands are already stained with the blood of scum. Nevertheless, he decides to trust the creep's words for now. Then he declares that if the pervert knight truly wants to repent, he must first accept that his crimes deserve nothing less than death, and be prepared to pay that price. Cirrus and Father Seelan are frozen in shock as Iron Fist obliterates the rubble trapping the knight. He warns the knight never again to toss around the word repent like some cheap hollow prayer. And with that, he turns his full attention to Cirrus. Sirius confirms her wounds have vanished, calling him the best walking first aid kit ever, but Ryfin just scoffs at the praise. Yet, when Sirius says his name, a shiver still runs down the brute's spine, no matter how cold her tone is. While she's muttering about him being a total weirdo, Ryfin's eyes lock onto Romad and his lackey trying to dip out. He challenges them to run, promising an unforgettable experience if they do. The giant priest gets right in their faces, his voice a low growl, demanding to know who sicked these clowns on Sirius as his massive club casually materializes in his hand. The hired goons start pouring sweat, a terrifying realization dawning on them. Mercy is not in this guy's vocabulary. A few brutal thuds later, and the chumps are a mangled, whimpering mess on the floor. They finally cough up the name Tarek, the absolute slimeball, who runs the Roll of Fame trade union. Apparently, he's holed up on the southern edge of Zeppelin just past the castle gate. A muscle in Ryfan's jaw clenches. He knows that bastard. He was the monster who tormented Sirius for 10 excruciating years in his past life. A life where Ryfan had intending to silence their target, only to discover the rat was already a rotting corpse in his own bed. A trembling Romad finally pipes up, questioning if the Titan seriously intends to hunt down Tarek. He warns him it's a suicide mission. The other lowlife explains to the Mountain of Muscle that this juggernaut is the head of the second largest trade union in the entire Chetan Principality, meaning starting beef with him would make Ryfan public enemy number one. But our guy just smirks, saying he knows precisely what kind of monster he's dealing with. On his way out, he spares the goons, telling them to huddle up if they don't want to freeze to death. Some moron immediately starts copping a feel of Romad's chest for warmth, seriously ticking him off. Meanwhile, back at the manor, the irritable lord is raging, demanding to know when the elf will be back and blasting Romad for the delay. He even lets it slip that he used Lantis's payment to buy them. Right on cue, a commotion erupts outside. They figure it's just the usual riffraff, but no, it's Ryfan already dismantling Tarek's entire crew, while the pretty boy priest follows behind, miraculously healing them. Ryfan is visibly fighting the urge to just end them all, even asking if Salon's magic includes a spell to fix shattered souls, or just wipe their memories clean. The priest lets out a weary sigh, explaining that even wounds that heal can leave permanent scars on the mind. He then asks what Ryfan's plan for the witnesses would have been, if he hadn't tagged along. The Titan coolly replies, he would have just walked out with the bastard's head. The pretty boy sighs, relieved he can just wipe their minds clean. He then confesses he's kinda hyped to see that monster get absolutely wrecked too. Suddenly, Talcata emerges, blocking their path. Our hard-headed hero tells him the man he's protecting is human garbage, asking why he'd even raise a sword for him. Talcata's response is simple. A warrior's code is to see his duty through. To back down now would be to abandon his honor. Ryfan points out that the scum inside isn't even his true master, but the orc counters that a duty is a duty, even one forced upon you. The Titan gets it. He knows orcs are fiercely honorable and unyielding. Cirrus and Salon are floored hearing him speak flawless orcish. The Elven Slayer steps forward, declaring she'll take on Talcata, armed with a new weapon this time. The orc just scoffs, remarking that the little elf seems to have leveled up. In the background, Ryfan quietly asks Salon to cover him if things go sideways. The pretty boy just smirks, saying that's his specialty. Talcata's attention snaps back, demanding if the powerful human plans to just walk past him to get to Tarek. Ryfan replies that his opponent is the elf warrior. To focus on anyone else would be a grave insult to her. The orc nods in understanding. He respects that warrior's code. With that settled, Ryfan steps inside the mansion, immediately hit by the foul stench of drugs. But the sight that greets him stops him dead in his tracks. Tarek and Barrett half-dressed and wallowing in their own squalor. Of all the depravity Ryfan has seen in his life, this scene ignites a rage he's never felt before. This is a line that can't be uncrossed. The air is thick with the smell of aphrodisiacs as the bloated pig Tarek screams, demanding to know who dared to barge in. He's furious that his guards didn't sound an alarm. Then Ryfan's eyes land on the elven girl, battered unconscious, and a storm of pure fury erupts inside him. Tarek panics, screaming for Talcata, while babbling about whether the intruder is after his money or his territory. He's totally convinced. This has to be a move by the Tauboin Trade Union. He frantically swears on the Rollafine Union's name to double whatever his rivals are paying, even offering a non-retaliation contract on the spot. But all Ryfan can picture is Cirrus enduring this monster for 10 years, and the thought just feeds his white-hot disgust. Before the fat slob can even finish his sentence, Ryfan absolutely snaps. His fist buries itself deep in the pig's stomach. When the man gasps for a reason, Ryfan snarls that a piece of filth like Tarek had the nerve to lay a hand on Cirrus. The coward completely falls apart, sobbing that he has no idea who she is, but our guy shows zero mercy. He systematically breaks the hands that violated her, and the legs that kicked her, his rage so intense he can't even speak about the other atrocities. Barrett watches completely horrified, calling it an injustice. But Ryfan growls that this is exactly what Tarek's countless victims must have felt in their final moments. When Barrett calls him a murderer, Ryfan just laughs in his face, calling out his hypocrisy. The man claims his conscience is clear, but our king of combat isn't buying it for a second. Outside, Cirrus and Salon are watching the whole brutal display. The Slayer whispers that it's too cruel, but our hero snarls back that scum like him deserve a fate far worse. The priest, hardened by his own past adventures, silently agrees. The pretty boy priest then reports that the Slayer already took care of Talcata, admitting he couldn't intervene fast enough. But Cirrus insists it was Salon's healing magic that saved her. Through his heightened senses, Ryfan realizes Talcata is still alive. His breathing is faint, but it's there. Barrett suddenly shouts out that Cirrus is the returned Slayer. The elf warrior's eyes go cold as she asks him directly, "Did you kill that elven child?" Barrett stumbles over his words defiantly, asking what she's going to do about it if he did. Her response is to slowly, deliberately draw her blade, declaring that even a worthless life like his might offer some small comfort to the child's spirit, and that's a debt she intends to collect. The man shrinks back in terror, absolutely losing his mind that he's about to die over a mere elf slave, just before she strikes him down. His last desperate cry for help is ironically for the very children he murdered. Just before his hand can connect, Cirrus delivers the final blow, vowing that she would never let a monster like him touch her with those disgusting hands. Sometime later, the team regroups around a crackling bonfire. Talcata runs the numbers for him. 7 female elves and 9 male orcs are present. Sirius expresses her gratitude, but he just bows, pledging that her master is like a father to him now. Ceylon immediately flags the lopsided gender ratio, and the Slayer elf chimes in that male elves and female orcs are basically a tough sell on the market. Then a couple murmurs the name Eldia, which jolts her memory of Ryfin mid-battle, questioning what happens to slaves, forcing her to reconsider everything she thought about him. Just then, Muscle Freak crashes back onto the scene, brandishing a slave contract, bearing the official seal of Rolophane's union leader. This is a huge deal, a document that took serious muscle to get. When they ask how, the hero just says he found the safe by blasting through the office wall. This earns him a fierce scolding from Father Sillin for being a total barbarian. The weirdo is absolutely floored. No one's called him that in 50 years. He starts to freak out, wondering if he's actually turning into a simple-minded brute. Pretty Boy wants to know why he even brought the slave contract, and Muscle Freak declares they're gonna need it. He turns to the crowd and makes a proclamation they are all free to choose. Their lives as slaves are officially over. Shocked whispers ripple through the group. The word freedom just confuses them. Taking orders from a new master already seems overwhelming. It's a gut-punching reality that they don't even grasp the concept of being free. The priest immediately asks if Ryfin is planning to start his own slave trading business, but the big guy shuts that down, revealing he has zero intention of ever selling them. Sion's next guess is that he's giving up the adventurer life to settle down, but then the lad firmly stamps the Rolofane seal onto the contract, officially severing their ties to Tarek's ownership. He knows this is just a formality, a necessary step to give them a safe harbor. After all, just dumping them on the street with no home and no strength would be nothing but an ego trip for him. Throwing them into the world completely unprepared would be a death sentence. Muscle Freak decides what they need first and foremost is an education. Later, over at Taubon's headquarters, Savolt is absolutely bug-eyed when he hears Ryfin brought in the union leader Tarek's entire slave stock. He demands to know how they were acquired. Hardhead just cryptically tells him he'll figure it out soon enough. For now, he needs Savolt to stash them somewhere off the books. He drops a heavy hint by tomorrow morning the truth will come out, and Savolt will be the only one in the know. If word gets out, he'll be the prime suspect. Savolt, used to these kinds of high-stakes threats, agrees to hear him out. The hero then drops a pouch of 100 gold coins on the table, more than enough to cover their expenses. The Taubon leader's jaw hits the floor. He's convinced this absolute madman robbed the Rolofan Manor blind. But hey, money is money, so he accepts, and says he's got a spot on the outskirts of Zeppelin where they'll never be found. Our guy lays down one critical rule. No one is to touch them or treat them like property. No one but him. Savolt smirks, joking that owners can get a little possessive, but he thinks the payment is way over the top. Then Redhead clarifies that the gold is also for their schooling language mathematics, accounting, history, philosophy, and if possible even medicine and healing arts. Savolt is completely baffled. He's certain Tarek would have already educated them, but the brute makes it crystal clear this is about real learning, not just obedience training. The idea leaves Savolt stunned. The thought that Reifenhardt wants to give slaves a legitimate academic education is insane. He asks why he would go to such ridiculous lengths. Hardhead shoots back that the more skilled a slave is, the more useful they are to their master. The trader scoffs at the idea, insisting that slaves aren't capable of that kind of learning. But the hero just shrugs, saying it's his money, so it's his gamble to take. If it pays off, the slaves become more valuable, which is a win-win for him. Savolt points out the obvious logistical nightmare. No self-respecting scholar would ever lower themselves to teach slaves. The dude just nods, fully aware of how arrogant academics are, and suggests hiring broke university students instead. The trader argues a student can't teach what they haven't even mastered yet, but our guy clarifies he only needs them to teach the absolute basics: reading, writing, and arithmetic, which also makes it way cheaper. With that, Savolt finally caves, though he warns it's a total waste of money, like trying to teach philosophy to a cat. Ryfin silently recalls that in his previous life, a few progressive thinkers had proposed educating slaves. It wasn't a crazy idea to him, but the ruling class had laughed it off, comparing it to teaching a dog how to paint a masterpiece. The nobility was convinced that all non-human races were fundamentally inferior. That deep-seated arrogance was the very reason slaves were kept ignorant to squash any hope of an uprising. And now Hardhead plans to weaponize that exact prejudice for his own endgame. Once these slaves start learning at an explosive rate, Savolt's mind is going to be blown, and he might even start educating his own assets. After all, smarter slaves are better for business. If this idea catches on, it could spark a revolution across the entire continent, something Ryfin completely failed to achieve in his past life. The great paradigm shift starts right here, right now. Later, back at their place, the big oaf has a sudden realization he gave all his cash to the trader and completely forgot about their own travel fund. He sheepishly asks Pretty Boy if she can spot him some coins. The Slayer deadpans that she could just return her new outfit for a refund. This sends the weirdo into a full-blown panic, begging her not to do it. She suddenly bursts out laughing. It's the first genuine laugh he's ever heard from her since she was enslaved, a detail that completely flies over Ryfin's head. The next morning, the city of Zeppelin is in an absolute uproar. The trade union leader of Rolifon Tarek and his successor, a man named Barry, have both been found dead. With no clear culprit and a storm of conflicting testimonies, the entire case is declared a dead end. Flash forward 2 weeks. Father Sillin is deep in prayer as his purification light arcs over the cursed Sirius, vaporizing undead demons. Ryfin watches them thinking they have incredible synergy. Either Sillin is perfectly matching Sirius's rhythm, or he's been trained for this since he was a kid. He can't help but wonder just how young this kid was when he first set foot on a battlefield. Pretty Boy was turning out to be way more of a powerhouse than he ever expected, with the potential to absolutely smoke his arch-nemesis Saintess Ellen if he keeps this up. But something's nagging at him. Why was Ceylon a total nobody in his past life? Did he die young? Before he can dwell on it, the exhausted priest asks if they've finally reached the Illusion Ruins. He points out the monsters here are way tougher than back in Palton, but admits it's been surprisingly chill since they used the secret entrance. 2 weeks after ditching Chaitin, they finally hit the Graham Kingdom, right at the foot of the Settlard Mountains, home to the legendary lost ruins of Illusion. This is the spot where our boy hopes to get his powers back. At the entrance, Pretty Boy starts whining that the door is sealed with powerful magic and brute force won't do squat, roasting our MC for not hiring a mage. But Ryfin just tells him to chill out. He's got this. Sillin is absolutely shook when he finds out this psycho was actually a mage. The idea of a martial mage, someone who's a beast in combat with an aura and magic, completely shatters his brain. The kid starts yelling about how unfair it all is, how he grinds non-stop for barely any gains. Then he notices Hardhead is gathering an insane amount of mana, way more than needed for a measly 3-circle spell. After 30 straight minutes of focusing, the absolute unit cracks the seal and swings the gate wide open. Pretty Boy, still fuming, warns him to never ever tell anyone he's a mage. See, in his first life, Ryfin was the GOAT, the world's first 10-circle mage. He came here, searching for a Lucian's voice to get his magic back, but the place is totally empty. Outside, our dude is sulking hard, while Pretty Boy tries to cheer him up, saying he can't be number one all the time, and doesn't own every single ruin. Still, the whole situation feels off. In his original timeline, illusion wasn't even discovered for another 17 years. The future is definitely changing. To lift the mood, Ceylon whips out a treasure he found. It's called Nihilon, a magical arrow that fires pure mana. The more you concentrate, the more shots you can fire. It looks like a normal stick, but it's a legit branch from the Tree of Life itself. The Elf Slayer gives it a test shot, and it completely vaporizes a tree in seconds. Even disguised as a twig, this thing is a serious bow. When he asks for her expert opinion, she just calls it a great weapon. Ryfin's mind is racing. How did Pretty Boy know it was special? He remembers it as Cyrus's main weapon in the past. Killian just claims he'd heard rumors, and says there are plenty of other ruins out there, so the weirdo shouldn't be so bummed out. But Ryfin knows nothing can replace Aleutian's voice, the one and only artifact that could restore his full power. When they finally drag themselves into Galen Village, Pretty Boy is ecstatic to eat food that someone else cooked for a change. Later, at the feast, the chef is beaming while patrons rave about her skills. She mentions that just a week ago, some uppity noble knights were acting like food critics trashing her cooking. She overheard them talking about hitting up some nearby ruins, and young lads' ears perk right up. The woman explains that a viscount named Kelberin arrived with an entire exploration party a week back, though most of them seemed to outrank him by a mile. There was even a knight decked out in solid gold armor shining like the sun, but she says he was actually super kind. The moment he hears golden armor and sword, Ryfin knows it can only be the legendary Golden Knight from the Count Tennis family of the Graham Kingdom. In another part of town, a man is praising Yusus for wiping out all the monsters in the ruins. He declares it's exactly the kind of feat you'd expect from the Golden Knight of Graham. Count Kelberin chimes in, saying it was an honor to witness his power. Yusus Tennis, the knight commander of the Tennis family, just reminds him that 1/3 of all the treasure will go to Kelberin just as they agreed. That night, Kelberin boasts that the real prize was getting to fight alongside a legend like Yusus Tennis. He says he couldn't care less about the artifacts. Yusus could keep every last one. The fancy lord figures he's already rich enough. And making friends with Sir Yusus is way more valuable. That's when Stoneface cuts in asking what Kelberin did with the adamantite and orichalcum. Kelberin just laughs, saying he told the land puppies he was going to forge some weapons. Stoneface Blondie, impressed by the Kelberin family's reputation in mining, sips his wine and guesses they have plenty of master dwarf blacksmiths. Flattered, the Viscount tries to introduce his daughters to the Golden Knight, completely ignoring the fact that Yusus is a married man. Yusus politely shuts him down. But when the Viscount casually brings up a younger sibling, Stoneface shatters his glass, his eyes blazing with fury. He growls that he has no sibling, plunging the room into a dead silence as the Viscount stammers out a pathetic apology. Just then, total chaos erupts outside, and a man comes barreling into the room. The Viscount demands a status report. The messenger screams that a demon just clawed its way out of one of the relics. It's Sephiatin, and it's right outside their door. The horrifying beast is tearing through soldiers and civilians like they're paper. But Yusus remains perfectly calm. He just wonders aloud if a summoning artifact got mixed in with the haul. Then he curses someone under his breath, calling them a stupid jerk. A veteran warrior starts barking orders, yelling for civilians to evacuate mages to the rear and knights to form a shield wall. The mages bombard Sephiatin with ice spells, trapping it in a prison of ice as the warrior orders his men to bind its legs and hold the line until the commander arrives. But then he freezes in horror as some kid named Russ is already charging the demon head-on, shouting that no foe can stand before the Tennis family's sword. The cocky brat manages to slash its face, but Sephiatin just backhands him into a wall before crushing the old warrior, who called him an idiot. Russ hits the dirt, his head split open and gushing blood. His brother's hushed words are cut short when Sir Euseus strides in ordering Sir Lot to forget these clowns and act like a knight. Euseus then levels an icy stare at Russ, and sneers asking what gives his brother the right. He warns him that the legendary knights of Tennis aren't bred from back-alley mutts, words that land like a punch to Russ's gut. The Golden Knight then pivots toward Sephiatin, a demonic beast that no non-aura user could ever hope to challenge, and roars for Eldred to awaken. A blinding golden light erupts from his armor until he's gleaming from head to toe, ready to throw down with the otherworldly monster. In another part of town, Father Silent is hyping up Graham's famous Golden Knight, Sir Yusus, to Iron Fist Ryfin. He's completely shook when the mountain-raised slab of muscle admits he's never even heard the name. Pretty Boy chimes in that Yusus is one of the continent's most cracked magic swordsmen, able to go toe-to-toe with any aura user. Even Ciri's heard of him. Out of nowhere, Ryfin asks if Ciri likes her new PJs, and she just nods. Salon counters that. If Yusus's power just comes from a magic item, then comparing him to an actual aura user is a whole different ballgame. Ryfin calls the magic armor Eldred the most broken gear of their time, but actually mastering it is another challenge entirely. Forged from true gold Eldrol, a material far rarer than true silver mithril, the magic armor Eldred and the magic sword Eldrin are the ultimate relics from the Silver Age, handed down through the Tennis family for generations. Any magic swordsman who can wield both Eldred and Eldrin is known as the Golden Knight. Just uttering the command Eldred unleashes a devastating surge of power, putting him on par with an aura user, but only if you have the skill to handle it. Back on the field, the Golden Knight commands himself to become a feather, riding the currents of the wind. Then Yusus, a blur of golden plate, launches himself at the demon and ignites the power of Eldrin. His 8th circle spell, Material Destruction, erupts and plunges the entire battlefield into chaos. Ryfin reflects that the House of Tennis has truly mastered the art of unleashing Eldred's true potential, but even the best tools in the world don't guarantee you'll be the strongest. Salon points out that Ryfin seems to hold magic swordsmen in high esteem, which is weird since aura users usually look down on them. But Tennis County's skill with magic armor can blow most sword techniques out of the water. On the battlefield, the Golden Knight boasts that his blade will pierce the eye of death itself, channeling the power of Leopard's Cry and Dragon's Senses. Salon recalls hearing that the Tennis family's original sword arts were lost, so they pivoted to relying on relics, a move their family now considers their greatest strength. Pretty Boy argues it makes sense. You can train your whole life and never awaken an aura, but with their relic, a Golden Knight is born, in every single generation. Yusus slams Sephiatin with a devastating heatwave. Salon gets it now, having an aura-class warrior guaranteed every generation is an absolutely priceless advantage. Even for him, taking on a magic swordsman, rocking Eldred would be tough. The Golden Knight then summons a chilling cold snow's fog and plunges his sword deep into Sephiatin, commanding it to disappear. With one final decisive slash, the Golden Commander fells the demon, as the soldiers erupt in cheers for his victory. That night, Ryfin lies awake in bed, wondering if that guy can really keep winning forever. The big guy starts talking about getting that artifact, and Salon gives him a sharp look, asking if he's seriously thinking about taking on the Count of Tennis. When Rifen confirms he wants to take it, Father Silent cuts in, reminding him that back in Shaitan's principality, they all fought together because Rifen was in the right. This time, however, Count Tennis discovered those ruins himself, making that artifact rightfully his. The truth in those words hits Rifen hard. He realizes that just taking it would make him nothing but a common thief. He sits up, struggling with how to get Salon on his side, without revealing his past life as her comrade. He looks at Pretty Face and says, there's something he has to confess, asking if she remembers him mentioning the unbreakable gym. He reminds her that the head was a disciple of the legendary Fist King Gerard. Rifen starts weaving his tale, explaining there are brutal trials built into their school's traditions. The bruiser adds that his master personally hid the artifact in those ruins, as a challenge for any disciple bold enough to claim it. While Siri is out cold, the two continue their hushed conversation. He admits it's their clan's messed up way of toughening up disciples since they can be a pretty rough bunch. Salon listens intently as Rifen clarifies that his master Gerard explored the illusion ruins long ago, but left the Silver Age artifacts untouched. Hardhead claims that the items discovered back then were always intended as prizes for the students. There's no way he would have even recognized the artifact Nile if he hadn't already known about it. Seelan nods, admitting that it all lines up. No random explorer could possibly know those kinds of details if the ruins were truly undiscovered. And just like that, Pretty Boy is completely sold on the story. Deep down, Rifen is battling a wave of guilt for twisting the truth. But it wasn't a complete fabrication. He would never in a million years steal something that belonged to someone else, no matter how OP those Silver Age relics are. Rifen wipes away a bead of sweat, fighting to keep his expression neutral, because he knows he has to get that artifact no matter the cost. Over by the manor, Sir Lot is gushing over Sir Eustace for annihilating the demon Sephiaton, saying it never even had a prayer against the legendary Golden Knight. The stone-faced blonde just tells everyone to clean up the mess and leaves the details to Sir Lot. Before walking away, Eustace warns that a swordsman, who only knows a basic downward strike, has no right to call himself a knight of tennis. Russ, still kneeling in the dirt, quietly vows that he is a swordsman of tennis, no matter what Eustace or anyone else says. The very next morning finds Russ grinding hard on the training grounds. When a pair of soldiers swagger over, one demands to know what that little stunt yesterday was all about. Russ just calmly states his goal was to eliminate the demon. The other guy scoffs, asking if he was following orders or if he's just too stupid to understand the command to wait for the captain. Russ just gives them a look that could cut steel, and declares himself a swordsman of Tenace, daring them to a duel if they have an issue with it. The two just sneer, calling him a filthy mongrel before walking away. Russ gets back to his drills, his blade carving a flawless downward path through the air. His timing is so impeccable that the movement itself seems to disappear between start and finish. Any master would be in awe of that single strike. But outside of that one downward slash and its unique breathing method, the rest of his swordplay is an absolute train wreck. The House of Tenace had its legendary swordsmanship wiped from existence ages ago, even though as a noble line of knights, they once commanded their own signature techniques. Russ, unfortunately, never got to learn them. A painful memory flashes through his mind, as he remembers his father teaching him only the absolute basics before the vassals stepped in, declaring that bastards were unworthy of proper training. In the end, his father could only pass down one thing, a fragment of their family's once great sword art, the one true path to awakening one's aura. Convinced that little Russ could be the one to revive that immense power, his father placed all his hopes in him. Russ refuses to let that dream die. The Tenny's blade, once a source of incredible strength, now exists only in that single downward slash, a crude move to outsiders, but everything to him. The Golden Knight Sir Eustace watches Russ practice completely. Sure, the kid will never amount to anything with just a single downward cut. The rest of their sword style is lost to history. Still, as he watches Russ pour his sweat and soul into it, he has to admit the kid is a natural. That night, Rifen and Hearth are griping about having to sneak around like this, especially after being reborn. With his mask on, he hops a fence near the Viscount's castle, figuring Kelberon's massively profitable mining operation must have paid for the spectacular fortress. It was clearly built by master dwarven craftsmen. After knocking the entrance guards out cold, our sneaky protagonist slips inside. One soldier is heard bragging that with Graham already having the Golden Knight, who in their right mind would dare to attack. His friend points out that the knights from the capital are just as formidable. The first soldier insists. Their lord is in a completely different league. He hears a faint noise but just dismisses it as his imagination running wild. Meanwhile, our hero is pressed against the wall, thinking that real thieves must have a good reason for clinging to ceilings. On this new path, he figures a little thievery isn't the worst thing in the world. He might even have a knack for it. He guesses the guys in the flashy armor have to be Tenace Knights, which means taking them down quietly is going to be a challenge. One guard finally spots him, but Rifen already knows that submission holds are the most effective way to score a silent takedown. After he gets them tied up, he detects a motion barrier and a heat-sensing spell. This is a pain because he can't just turn it off. Every magical barrier has a core, and his eyes quickly find a rock covered in runes. He smashes it to dust and glides into the warehouse, which is packed with secret treasures like a sealing jar, an infinity bag, and even a celestial harp. He bypasses most of it, muttering about the chaotic organization, until a Helton blade grabs his attention. It's actually a Talad sword, a completely different weapon despite its appearance. Then he lays eyes on his target, the Elysian's voice. As he moves toward it, a simple thread trap snaps and he freezes in place, convinced he is completely screwed. This idiot nearly has a heart attack after tripping on a basic string trap. Viscount Kelberin is in a full-blown panic, his wife looking on with worry. As alarms shriek throughout the castle, a report comes in that the intruder is in the southern tower. Ryfin is cursing himself out, furious that he got past deadly magical defenses, only to be busted by something so incredibly stupid. He decides then and there to leave thieving to actual thieves. He takes off at a dead sprint, blasting through soldiers, trying his best not to hit them hard enough to kill, but he's seriously struggling to hold back his strength. Outside, knights and mages have teamed up, launching fireballs with orders to take him down. Our shadowy weirdo snatches a nearby guard while on the run, muttering a quick sorry about this before turning him into his new personal shield. He uses the soldier to absorb a massive fireball from the mages. The poor guy gets fried instantly while the squad screams about what an evil monster he is. The dude just shrugs it off, figuring the soldier's armor was blessed anyway. Then a knight unleashes a volley of arrows, which he parries only to see the superheated metal melt and form chains around him. He realizes they're trying to restrain him, not just kill him, and has to admit, they're pretty good. Someone yells for Surgar to move in, and for Jode to cast Flame Arc. Ryfin knows he's in serious trouble, if even the rank-and-file knights can throw around magic that powerful. Then from out of nowhere, Russ tosses his shield aside and launches himself forward, ready to give this masked jerk a lethal taste of a tenace sword. Sir Lot is screaming for him to fall back, but Ryfin has no clue who this lunatic even is. Lot commands Russ to get back into formation, but Russ is deaf to the world, literally shoving his own allies aside to get to the intruder. The rugged fighter watches him come. His breathing, his footwork, his swing, it all seems totally unremarkable. And yet there's something about the strike that defies all logic. Russ's one swing shatters the molten chains, but before he can mount a follow-up, our stealthy hero slams a punch into his solar plexus, sending him flying. The kid notes that even with an attack that strong, the intruder couldn't dodge it, which proves he's not a well-rounded fighter. Suddenly, the Golden Knight of Graham makes his grand entrance. The Golden Knight lunges, but Ryfin casually bats the attack aside. Okay, this dude is no random intruder. He's on a whole other level. When Ryfin insists he has his reasons, Eustace fires back, that those can wait. Living by the motto to always strike first, Ryfin explodes toward the Golden Knight, ready to throw down. Steel screams against steel as they erupt in a blur of motion, dodging, parrying, and probing each other's defenses, while the soldiers watch completely frozen. They're just speechless at the high-level duel unfolding. Ryfin knows he messed up a totally suicidal move, but the Golden Knight realizes his own strategy is completely falling apart. A torrent of energy surges around the golden-haired knight as his howling shadow technique powers up, and he bellows that he will become the roaring shadow of the abyss. But the Golden Knight is left absolutely floored when Ryfin just deflects the howling shadow, flexing an insane mastery of magic. Ryfin smugly admits he knows pretty much every spell in the book, effortlessly weaving through Eustace's attacks until a powerful blow lands with enough force to rattle his entire suit of armor. Summoning arrows of wind and roaring flames, he invokes the name of Eldril, commanding it to unleash its full, devastating power. A colossal fireball barrels right toward him, and Ryfin has a terrifying thought. Oh crap, this is how I die. The world whites out in a massive explosion, and as the dust finally settles, Ryfin is shook by the sheer destruction. Turns out the Golden Boy can dish out some serious high-tier magic too. Eustace is equally stunned that this S-tier criminal tanked the hit without a single scratch. He can't wrap his head around it. How could anyone survive that blast? He didn't even see the guy flinch, let alone dodge. For someone whose vision pierces beyond human limits, the Golden Knight starts to suspect the truth. This intruder, he might be an aura user. He follows up with a corrosive acid mist, but Ryfin just nonchalantly blows it away with a blast of wind before rushing straight at Eustace. He slams a devastating punch into his gut before the knight can even blink. And with that one blow, Eustace's suspicion is confirmed. This guy is 100% an aura user. Ryfin unleashes a furious barrage of punches, but the Golden Knight parries every single one with his blade, realizing he completely underestimated this man's power. His entire strategy shifts. Now that he knows he's up against an aura user, the game has changed. He roars that the legendary Sword of Themis is more than a match for any aura, but Ryfin just grinds his teeth in frustration, as if aura users weren't already a massive pain. This guy had to be a magic spammer too. The epic clash pulls in every eye, and Yusus declares that it's all starting to add up. Of course, someone powerful enough to be an aura user would have the guts to attempt to heist this insane. Rifen, meanwhile, is floored. How did the Golden Knight figure it out? He's been deliberately hiding Jim Unbreakable's signature golden aura because it's way too extra. And he's not about to reveal his hand just because this blonde knight got suspicious. Yusus, on the other hand, finds the whole situation sketchy. Why would someone with this much power be hiding it? He comes to a conclusion: this guy must be a total noob. He must have just awakened his aura recently, meaning he's no real threat. Convinced of this, Yusus calls on Eldril, asking for the power to obliterate his foe completely. Rifen feels the air crackle with danger as the light of Eldril gathers to swallow him whole. Then he spots a familiar golden sheen and sends a silent prayer of thanks to the heavens that his opponent is the Golden Knight. As the blinding attack descends, Rifen digs his heels in, throwing up a spiral guard to defend. He takes the blast head-on. A brilliant golden flash detonates, and when the smoke clears, Sir Yusus is absolutely speechless. The invader blocked the light of Eldril. Again. Rifen's spiral guard was a split second too slow though, and he feels a sharp sting from the impact. Without a second to waste, Rifen vaults off the roof and vanishes into thin air. Yusus moves to give chase, but Sir Lot's voice cuts through, demanding to know what he's doing. The commander barks orders for Lot to check the relic chamber for missing items and form a search party, declaring there's no way this intruder is getting away. When Lot asks if the target is dead, the Golden Knight just scoffs. An attack like that, it wouldn't even scratch a guy like him. Elsewhere, Cyrus violently shakes Cylon awake, screaming that she has a terrible feeling about Rifen. At that exact moment, our hero is sinking deep into cold, dark water. By morning, Cyrus is parkouring across the rooftops, dragging a dazed Cylon behind her as the whole town shouts about a thief on the loose. Cylon whines that being dragged around like a sack of potatoes is seriously killing his vibe. Their luck runs out when a citizen points a knight right in their direction. In seconds, every knight in the city has their eyes locked on Cyrus, as cries echo out that the girl is cornered, with nowhere left to run. Right on cue, the Slayer unleashes her power, Nihil sending the knights flying like bowling pins. The Golden Knight hears the commotion and demands a status report from Sir Lot, who explains these aren't your average street thugs. That's all Yusus needs to hear, as he draws his sword ready to step in personally. Meanwhile, Cyrus yells for Cylon, who seems more than ready for his Slayer-powered piggyback ride. He even jokes about when Rifen is finally going to teach him how to get ripped. In a blur, she sidesteps Yusus's Blade of the Wind, and her eyes go wide. She knows him instantly, the Golden Knight of Graham. He's shocked. He once gave a rare sword to an elf. On top of that, a high-ranking priest is with them, proving to Sir Yusus these are no common thieves. Cylon can't believe that moron actually got caught. Suddenly, the Golden Knight swoops in, tossing Cyrus aside as the situation starts to get real. And just like that, Cyrus finds herself squaring off against the ferocious Golden Knight, a matchup she never ever saw coming. Rifen's eyes flutter open. He feels like he's been hit by a truck, and he has no clue where he is. The guy knows it was a monumentally stupid move, to fight a dude in the world's strongest armor while handicapped by a bandaged-up shackle. Still, at least he managed to swipe Lucian's orb. But seriously, where the heck is he? Just then, an old dwarf named Hethos appears, asking if he's alright, and more importantly, if he can eat. Even though every muscle screams at him, Rifan forces himself up, insisting he's fine, so Hethos has Miss Tilla whip up some barley porridge. In walks Tilla of the Steel Hammer tribe. She might look like a kid, but don't get it twisted, she's a full-grown dwarven warrior. She places the bowl down, and our muscle-bound hero is immediately suspicious. Dwarves being this friendly with a human, that almost never happens. His doubts are basically confirmed when an elder enters the room, introducing himself as Gelfid, an Alpath, priest from the Delphistone clan. He's thrilled to see their so-called savior is finally awake. Gelfid then drops a bombshell 6 years ago. Their great priest received a divine message from Alpath himself, foretelling of a man with a body of steel and a brilliant mind who would emerge from a path of darkness. This man would carry the tears of the northern wind and was destined to literally rewrite fate, which in plain talk meant a super-jacked dude with a galaxy brain was going to pop out of an ice cave, and they needed to rescue him and treat him like the chosen one. The priest even broadcasted this prophecy across the entire continent. Gelfid has spent every single winter waiting for this hero to appear. All Rifan can do is let out a nervous laugh, realizing that Alpath totally came in clutch for him. See, Alpath is the dwarves' god, and he occasionally drops these divine DMs on his followers. 6 years ago, at the exact moment Rifan regressed, the god sent this message out. Apparently this deity has one-day shipping. Rifan can't believe Alpath has his back again, especially after he fumbled so badly the first time. He's beyond grateful for this second shot, silently vowing he won't screw it up this time. When asked, Gelfid declares that Alpath never makes mistakes, so everything they've done was for their savior. Miss Tilla then points out how insanely fast Rifan is healing, and our hero gives all the credit to the little warrior. She blushes, saying all she did was make some porridge. He just grins, confident that a good meal is the ultimate recovery hack. The pint-sized powerhouse then asks if she should get Priest Gelfeed, who had something to discuss. Rifan, however, insists on finding the priest himself. Tilla is not having it, and basically becomes his personal crutch, which totally weirds him out as this tiny warrior leads the way. The Steelhammer tribe are mountain dwarves, enslaved under the Kelberan Viscounty, yet they've fiercely held onto their faith and traditions, unlike the orcs or elves. Dwarves are only ever enslaved for their insane technical skills that humans can't even touch. It's said they can hear the earth itself whisper, guiding them to rich mineral veins. They're sold in family units, a cruel tactic to keep them effective, and their culture intact, priests included. This is how they've become the secret architects of empires, the only ones who truly understand how society is built. Tilla tells him there are 60 of them, all considered property of Viscount Kelburn, with most of the men slaving away in the Settlard mountain mines. To prevent any uprisings, the humans hold their families hostage. The news hits Rifan hard, and he quietly apologizes for asking. Just then, Gelfeed approaches to greet their savior, but Rifan Hart immediately thanks them for nursing him back to health, and tells the old dwarf to just call him Rifan. The priest admits he doesn't fully understand why Rifan is the chosen one, only that he clearly doesn't view dwarves as slaves. He's always treated them as equals for sure, but changing the destiny of an entire species is a whole other level of epic. Gelfeid still has no clue why Alpath chose a human, but they are clinging to the Oracle's promise with everything they have. They believe against all odds that this man is their salvation. For the time being, Rifan figures his best move is to cooperate. The old dwarf studies him with an unnerving look, as if he already knows Rifan is their destined hero. Shaking it off, the big guy asks what Gelfeid wanted to talk about. The priest reveals that the great priest, Michelin Alpath's high priest, and the literal pillar of all dwarven kind wishes to see him. A slight smile plays on Riefenhardt's lips. He knows Michelin was already the high priest 30 years ago. Gelfeid seems worried that the hulking man might dismiss this as crazy talk since humans are deaf to the sound of truth. He's relieved when the Man of Steel just remains cool and receptive. In his past life, the Antares Empire fell to ruin. Terrified it could happen again, he thinks, meeting the wise Michelin might be the key to forging a better plan. Gelfeid explains, Michelin is at the Grand Forge, Alpath's great temple, a sacred place known to only a handful of dwarves. They'll need a guide, and Miss Tilla, the last of her tribe with a warrior's blood, is ready to take him there. Gelfeid can't help but notice how this mysterious man seems to already know so much. He can practically hear Rifan's thoughts, catching the vibe that this guy already knew about their high priest and the Grand Forge. The old dwarf sighs, noting that most humans avoid dwarves who can hear the sound of truth. When Rifan casually admits he knew that too, Gelfeid's curiosity hits a fever pitch. He presses him, asking just how much he knows. But this titan of a man just apologizes, saying it's too early to spill the beans. Suddenly, Hethos crashes into the room in a full-blown panic, asking if Rifan has companions, a young boy and an elf. He reports that they've been captured and tossed into Viscount Kelburn's castle. Cut to the fortress where Golden Boy is absolutely raging, demanding everyone hunt for the thief at all costs. Eustace orders his men to ditch their honor and use any torture necessary to make them talk. The Golden Knight is stunned, looking at a mere elf, who is somehow wielding an advanced magic sword, a weapon reserved for a knight captain or higher. On top of that, there's a villainous priest, who's packing enough divine power to go toe-to-toe with an archbishop. Desperate to uncover their secrets, he commands a pair of twisted individuals to handle the interrogation. Hurt them or end them. Barras and Lento are totally lost on what to do with the captives. But an order is an order, so they clench their jaws and prepare to get it done. Barras cracks his knuckles, stepping up for the first round of interrogation, and Lento just shrugs it off. 30 minutes later, they're both getting an earful from Father Chilan. He's dropping some serious intel, explaining how Rifan's martial clan is built different on a whole other level of intense. Then he hits them with the legendary name Jim Unbreakable, the undisputed martial king of Gerard's clan, an absolute titan. He breaks down their savage training regimen while the two goons just sit there unable to get a single word in. Silan stresses that this is just their standard training, a warm-up that no normal human could possibly survive. Prettyface isn't buying it, his expression hardening. He argues that there's no way those warriors endured something so savage. He starts ranting about their last exam being a total setup. Their mission was to recover a relic. But plot twist, the Tanny's household was already holding it. Silan then reveals just how brutally the clan deals with failure. The skinny prisoner suddenly spills everything, revealing that Rifan decided to jack the relic anyway because it was originally Jim Unbreakable's property. He explains that the martial king never imagined the Tanny's family would actually find the relic, and their innocence is obvious, since the ancient ruins are a total mystery to everyone. The priest adds that he only got involved after our boy's story started making perfect sense. Barras is just shell-shocked watching their prisoner sing like a canary, without them even laying a finger on him. Eventually, the priest's mouth goes dry from all the talking, and he practically dives for the water Seelan offers. Baraz can only think, dude, are you supposed to be telling us all this? He's seriously questioning if this priest is being a very good friend right now. But the scrawny guy insists it's no big secret. Baraz is still sweating though. If the world found out the martial king's chosen successor was a thief, his entire reputation would be torched. Father Chilan just scoffs, pointing out that, if Ryfin gave a damn about his reputation, he never would have attempted such a high-stakes heist in the first place. This gets Baraz thinking, and he asks if they have any idea where the relic is now. Silan admits they were just the cleanup crew waiting for the signal. Baraz completely freaks out, demanding a way to get in contact with them. Dollface, however, calmly points out that no real aura user would ever fail at something as basic as a simple theft. Barris hates to admit it, but he knows the kid has a point. Meanwhile, the other weirdo is left wondering if every interrogation is this bizarrely chill. But as soon as the talking stops, everyone feels it, something is seriously wrong. Over in the woods, Miss Tila is amazed at how quickly the redhead tracked a deer. Ryfin just shrugs, saying it's a simple trick for any aura user. He explains you just have to expand your senses and lock onto the trail, a skill that any professional hunter would kill for. He asks if they're still inside Kelberin territory, where hunting is strictly forbidden. Tila just rolls her eyes, completely unbothered by such petty rules. Her attitude flips a switch in Ryfin's head. He realizes he can't let himself be tied down by trivial laws if his ultimate goal is to free the otherworldly species. So what if it's technically illegal? All that matters now is recovering his strength and fast. He takes one bite of the roasted meat and… Tila's jaw drops. His muscles are pulsing with a golden aura. She wonders if he's actively healing. Ryfin tests his power, whipping a punch through the air, which unleashes a shockwave that nearly knocks her off her feet. A confident grin spreads across his face as he declares, "I'm back at 100%. Back at the manor, Yusu's Tanis, Graham's legendary golden knight, stares out a window, absolutely certain it was no mere coincidence that the rugged stranger went after that one relic above all others. His mind flashes back to a meeting from 1 month ago, when a mysterious man approached him. The man revealed the sigil of the Sage of Silver, a test to see if Yusus was truly the heir to the Tani's legacy. That was the very day Yusus had been named successor. His father had then revealed a deep family secret, their connection to an ancient order called the Sage of Silver. These sages were beings of immense power capable of toppling entire nations. Their wisdom and technology were light years beyond anything in the modern world. They operate in the shadows, revealing themselves only when humanity itself is on the brink of collapse. Among their ranks, a king is considered nothing more than a mid-level agent. Yusus remembered bowing as the Sage of Silver handed him a scroll, entrusting the exploration of the illusion ruins to the Tanis household. The sage was claiming all the relics within, but he tasked them with retrieving just one specific item, a piece known as Illusion's Voice. The mission came with a dire warning fail, and the Tanis family would be erased from history. The weight of that command presses down on him even now. Just then, Barras and Lento enter to report. They've wrapped up the interrogation of their two captives. Their story lines up, but they add that something about it feels deeply wrong, which immediately gets Yusus's full attention. Down at the gate, a soldier named Drainspots, a familiar face, and starts trembling the pure chaos from yesterday, replaying in his mind. None of them could have ever prepared for waking up to that kind of attack. As just regular soldiers, they know they have zero chance against a monster who can literally punch through solid armor. Drain sends up a silent prayer that he never crosses paths with that man again. The word is the relic got stolen, and since Sir Yusus is holding the thief's buddies, there's a pretty good chance the guy will be back for a rescue mission. With a heavy sigh, Drain just hopes that if the man shows, he makes it quick and painless like last time. In that exact moment, his partner sees a terrifying figure approaching. It's the fist guy, whispering two words into the wind, Calamity Horn. Meanwhile, Yusus learns that the thief is from a group calling themselves Jim Unbreakable. He can't wrap his head around why the all-powerful Sage of Silver would be interested in them. Blondie is still skeptical of their story, but the real wild card is Silan. The man is a pilgrim and a high-ranking priest, wielding power that rivals a bishop's. He's 100% sure a man like that could never be a trained spy. For Blondie, it's just easier to believe the kid's wild tale. He just assumes these two are disposable pawns who are about to be abandoned by their leader. The only question left is how in the world are they going to catch the real thief? Going all out is an option, but there's no guarantee they'd even walk away from it. Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion rips through the air, making the Golden Knight whip his head around. He knows instantly the thief is back, and he heard his friends were here. The blast sends the entire castle into a frenzy, while Barris rallies the Tennis Knights, ordering them to unleash their true power. He vows that tonight will not be a repeat of last night. But the Man of Steel just smirks. He's on a different level now too. Sir Lot barks an order for Barris and Lento to charge, but a single devastating punch from Ryfen sends both of them flying. The absolute tank of a man calmly explains that shields are basically useless against aura attacks, and it's obvious these knights have never fought an aura user in their lives. Out of nowhere, the mages deploy their so-called priest's protection, screaming curses at the thief for decking Barris and Lento. But this brick wall of a man just stomps his foot once, and the resulting shockwave sends the mages tumbling through the air. They launch a volley of ice flame arrows and a lightning storm, but Ryfin drops them all, with a barrage of rapid-fire aura bullets. As they're sent flying, they scream obscenities at him. He just figures that if they're supposedly skilled mages, they can handle a little roughhousing, though he admits he expected one or two of them to put up a better fight. His next targets are the priests, who start yelling for him to fight like an honorable aura user, instead of resorting to such cowardly moves. Ryfin can't believe the nerve of these clowns trying to jump him while preaching about honor. The soldiers can only watch in horror as he effortlessly chokes out priests and snatches Father Lauren, who begs for his life, babbling that some priests get stronger when injured. So Ryfin just knocks them out clean instead. With Father Smard next on his list, the remaining soldiers scramble to swarm the unstoppable thief. They're floored by how much more powerful he is today. This is the untamed raw energy of a true aura master. Suddenly, Sir Lot spots their resident loose cannon. Russ just standing on the field and absolutely loses it, demanding to know what he's doing. He rages at the fool for always recklessly charging into battle, when he's told to hold back, yet now he's just chilling. Sir Lot, utterly disgusted with the bastard, decides he's disowning him the second they get home. But Russ is frozen in place, completely awestruck by the aura flowing from Ryfin, like a brilliant river of light controlling and amplifying his power at will. For the first time in his life, he can clearly read the thief's flow of energy and predict his movements, a skill no one ever taught him. He understands now. The man's breathing, his energy control. It belongs to someone who has reached the absolute zenith of martial arts. His mind is completely blown. Russ suddenly sees exactly how he's supposed to move in a fight of this caliber, stunned by the thief's flawless technique. While the iron-fisted warrior continues to tear through the soldiers, Ryfin finally spots the main event commander Sir Eustace wielding his legendary Eldrad. The Golden Boy yells out, demanding to know what he's done to his knights. Ryfin just shoots him a wicked grin and starts trolling the stone-faced blonde. He calls him out, asking why he's pretending he just arrived, when he was obviously spectating from behind the wall. The accusation makes Eustace clench his teeth in fury. He's seething, wondering how this guy could have possibly known. With a cocky smirk, our guy explains that the magic armor might grant Yusu's aura-level power, but it doesn't give him aura-level senses. He deduces that Yusu's wanted to gauge his strength, but using his own men as cannon fodder is a seriously messed up move. It totally trashes the fair and just image of the Golden Knight that everyone talks about. As Yusus grinds his teeth, the soldiers nervously insist their commander would never do something so dishonorable. The brawler points out that there's no other explanation for a high and mighty knight showing up this late. He could have gotten here way faster, even if he'd been taking a shower. Yusu's practically glowing with rage, claims he just overslept, but Ryfin is not buying that lame excuse for a second. No one could sleep through a wall being demolished. He even mocks him, asking if he's some kind of sleeping beauty. That is the last straw. Yusus ignites his Eldrad, vowing to make the thief pay for staining the honor of tennis, as he transforms into the radiant Golden Knight. The junior king of Fist braces himself. The real fight is about to begin. In a blinding flash, Yusus lunges at the muscle-bound freak, channeling the flow of purity into his blade. Totally hyped, Ryfin wonders if that's the legendary sword of pure mana, the perfect weapon to challenge his aura. Yusus unleashes a furious strike, the clang of steel on Fist echoing across the battlefield. Ryfin knows his body is tough, but it can't block an arcane weapon head-on. And yet, as Yusus's slash descends, Ryfin's spiral guard flares into existence, deflecting the blow and completely turning the tables. Meanwhile, in the prison, Sirius and Father Silone listen to the distant sounds of battle, wondering what's going on. The Slayer girl immediately figures it must be Ryfin Hart, staging a one-man rescue mission. Celine teases her for acting like she doesn't care, even though it's obvious she completely believes it's him, which makes her blush furiously. While they eat, Sirius gets lost in thought, confused as to why Ryfin is being so kind to her. Celine just jokes that the guy must have a thing for elves. Sirius admits that at first she just thought he was some kind of hardcore role player. The doll-faced girl has to agree he totally gave off that vibe. But then she recalls the intensity in his gaze and knows his motives run deeper. The Pilgrim Boy chimes in that this kind of talk about a guy being special and different is exactly what women say right before they get married and end up cursing their husbands for life. Or so he was told by a nun at his orphanage. Sirius just stares, wondering what kind of unhinged nun teaches a little kid something like that. Silone's mood suddenly sours, and he starts cursing Ryfin for dragging them into his personal war. He grumbles that if Ryfin was going to steal something, he should have been way more careful. Still, the Slayer elf can tell he doesn't actually hold a grudge against the brawler. What's truly eating away at the pretty boy is that by accepting the job, he made himself an accomplice. He feels guilty, because he did nothing to stop the muscle-bound idiot. He understands they can't exactly follow the law to survive. He's hitting 20 next year, putting him just 3 years behind Rifen. Sirius is caught off guard by his sudden maturity. Then she nearly gags when she does the math, and realizes they're only 3 years apart. She'd always mentally pegged Ceylon as being at least 20 years younger. She figures one mean joke about his pretty face would probably make him cry. Just then, the cell door flies open, and a Miss Tilla barges in asking if they're Ceylon and Sirius. She drops a bomb she's working for Reifenhart. The mission is simple, it's time to escape. Ceylon is completely stunned, but Sirius immediately identifies Tilla as a dwarf. The pretty boy remarks that she looks totally human, aside from her ears. Sirius lets out a laugh, calling him a naive kid just moments after thinking he sounded so grown up. As they sneak out, a guard spots the thief's companions. Before the situation can blow up, Sirius flattens him with a savage kick, instantly shifting into combat mode. Another soldier lunges at her from behind, but Tilla is more than ready. She parries the strike and hurls the attacker away like he's a ragdoll. Our Slayer elf stares completely floored by the dwarf's raw power. Tilla just grins, bragging that dwarves are built different as she urges them to move. Meanwhile, Rifen remains locked in a savage duel with the Golden Knight. He's certain that Tilla's breakout mission is already a success. But Eustace catches the thief's eyes darting toward the underground prison. He starts to wonder if this entire epic battle is just a massive diversion. The Iron Fist smirks, basically confirming he wouldn't be fighting this hard unless something big was on the line. A tidal wave of power explodes around him as he finally stops holding back. The Golden Boy is shaken to his core, realizing this thief hadn't even been fighting at full strength. Eustace lets out a roar, lunging forward and slashing with his sword, Eldrad aiming to cut Rifen clean in half. The tough guy effortlessly flips out of the way and counters with a brutal smack that sends the Golden Knight stumbling backward. Determined to regain control, Eustace faces a relentless barrage as our guy charges up another fist. He slams it into the ground, unleashing a massive shockwave that Eustace is forced to dodge once again. When Eustace invokes the cry of Eldrad, Rifen shoots forward for a gut punch, only to hit nothing but air. It seems the Golden Knight has powered up too, and he's finally taking this fight seriously. In a flash, 5 mirror images of Eustace materialize surrounding Rifen. Every single one of them feels real. Rifen, who had underestimated Eustace's skills against aura users, now knows he was dead wrong. This isn't some cheap illusion. It's a high-level mage technique. This Golden Boy is way more powerful than he let on. All 5 clones blast him with material destruction, but Rifen identifies the real one in a nanosecond and sends him flying with a single punch. Eustace is completely freaking out. The old soul inside Rifen almost pities the guy for not knowing a veteran mage can easily read subtle mana signatures. The Golden Boy screams that the Sword of Tennis has never known defeat and charges in for another attack. But Rifen activates his Spiral Guard, shattering the ice magic, shrugging off a volley of wind arrows, and blocking the breath of corrosion without a single scratch. Our guy just flexes with a cocky grin. He's practically styling on Eustace, whose mind is breaking, trying to figure out how this muscle-bound moron is tanking every single element he's got. Most aura users can't use Spiral Guard, not because it's complex, but because it's deceptively simple. Anyone can coat their body in aura for defense, but to circulate it at the same time, for a perfect offense and defense, it would literally tear their body apart. Only those from Gym Unbreakable possess the insane physique to withstand that kind of strain. Rifen knows it burns a ridiculous amount of aura, but for him, that's not a problem. Eustace is absolutely seething and demands to know who is backing a monster like Rifen. Rifen casually points to his subordinate, which only makes Eustace feel like he's being completely clowned on. Enraged, he commands his sword Eldrad to awaken, and to unleash the light of Eldrad. Sensing true danger for the first time, Rifen decides it's time to pull out his trump card. As the Golden Knight charges forward in a blaze of holy light, the Iron Fist meets him head-on with a quadruple-layered Calamity Horn. The Golden Knight thrusts his blade forward. The Iron Fist meets its tip with his own. Their ultimate moves collide in a cataclysmic explosion. Utter chaos erupts outside the Viscount's castle as the Golden Knight takes the full force of the Calamity Horn. His armor begins to splinter as he screams, demanding to know what kind of technique could shred his ultimate defense. Rifen's layered aura fists create a series of concussive blasts. Each impact is like a meteor strike, and the vortex of energy tears Eustace's defenses to ribbons. Realizing the big guy has only one charge left, Eustace refuses to back down, but the final punch obliterates everything in its path and smashes him violently into the wall. As the dust settles, Eldrad is seen plunged into the ground, while Sir Lot stares in utter disbelief. The Sword of Tennis has been defeated. Eldrad's magic flows from the blade itself, so as long as the sword is intact, the armor will slowly regenerate. Even though it could take half a year, the thief walks over and picks up Eldrad, making Eustace think he's about to steal it. But instead, the Iron Fist hands the legendary sword to Lot, with an apology, explaining that he only came for the stolen artifact. Lot is shocked he fought with such ferocity, but without a shred of greed. Though Ryfen secretly thinks Sirius would go crazy for a sword like Eldrad, he'd rather give her the divine light sword Messiah though. Just as he's about to walk away, a subordinate named Rust screams that the tennis sword is not defeated. Lot is so done, he's ready to kick the kid out of the order. While our muscle-bound hero remembers this loud-mouthed punk, the brat declares that he too is a tennis sword and charges in. Ryfen looks completely unimpressed. He knows the kid's only move is a simple downward swing, but an unexpected burst of glowing blue energy forces him back. He's shocked to feel a sharp sting he's been cut on his nearly unbreakable frame. In a split second it clicks, that's blade aura, and Russ with a smirk confirms it, declaring he's finally proven himself as the sword of tennis. That brilliant sky blue energy triggers a flash of memory in Ryfen's sword St. Cyrus, the legendary hero who once faced the Demon King. The name escapes his lips, Sword St. Cyrus, and the sound of it absolutely floors Russ. Because his true knighted name is Cyrus von Tennis, he's been dismissed his whole life, stuck with the common name his mother gave him, Russ. Ryfen is furious with himself for not connecting the dots sooner. The Tennis family is famous for the Golden Knight. Now 30 years later, when the Sword Saint emerges, their house is set to become a marquisate, despite the lingering stain of a swordsman who used magic gear. That's why the Golden Knight wasn't on Ryfen's radar. In his past life, the guy was a forgotten footnote in history. The future Sword Saint actually blushes hearing the title. Our stoic hero just plays it off, claiming he must have him confused with someone else. The kid's face falls, his disappointment on full display. Ryfen remembers the legends of Cyrus, painting him as cold and unreadable. But people can change. Done with the conversation, Russ lunges forward, blade aura, blazing only to eat a gut punch that barely even tickles. Ryfen is shocked for a second, but then realizes Cyrus must have used his aura to absorb the impact, and he's seriously impressed by the skill. Not bad for a dude who just unlocked it. Ryfen senses the kid is about to go berserk, and wisely creates some distance. Cyrus attacks again with blinding speed, his strikes completely unpredictable to Ryfen, the man who would become the King of Fist. Ryan Hart can't read a single one of Cyrus's moves because every attack comes from a wild angle no trained fighter would ever use. Combat is built on patterns refined over generations like the unbreakable style his grandpa Gerard drilled into him. But this kid fights like a feral beast with zero form and absolutely no rhythm. He should be an easy counter. And yet there isn't a single opening. Ryfen remembers the old stories that the Sword Saint was a once-in-a-century prodigy, and now he's seeing why. In a flash, he recalls Cyrus bragging that he had slain the 4 heavenly kings. He even took down the great orc warrior Tothid. The claim sounded absurd back then, but seeing Cyrus fight now, Ryfen believes every word. Reborn, the King of Fist is face-to-face with his old rival's greatest opponent. Fired up, he shatters Russ's blade aura with a single explosive punch, leaving the kid utterly stunned. Even then, Russ hefts his sword, declaring he is the blade of tennis. His overhead strike, perfected over years, descends with the power to split the sky. The spirit of a man fated to become his rival all over again. Determined to smash that destiny, Ryfen hammers a vicious punch into his gut and quietly wishes him farewell. But Cyrus refuses to collapse. He's on his knees, struggling to breathe, and he still identifies himself as the sword of tennis that never surrenders. Ryfen gets the chilling urge to finish him, to neutralize a future threat before it grows. But an inner voice tells him to stop, not because Cyrus is innocent, but because taking him out now would steal Tothid's long-awaited shot at revenge. He understands his true purpose is to forge a worthy rival for Tothid. Ryfen spares Cyrus, banking on him growing stronger for their inevitable showdown. In his past life, Tathid's clashes with the Sword Saint only forged them both into legends. Ryfen knows that killing Cyrus at this moment could mess everything up. Declaring that Cyrus is destined to be defeated by Tothid, he turns his back and leaves. Cyrus, shocked and enraged, explodes with aura, letting out a furious roar that startles Sir Lot. Outside, Tilla greets, Ryfen overcome with relief. Her father Silent jokes that they've certainly had a memorable adventure because of him. The pretty boy admits he anticipated some trouble on his pilgrimage, but getting locked up wasn't part of the plan. Then he chews Ryfen out for endangering Sirius, an elf girl in all that chaos. Ryfen panics, demanding to know if anyone touched her, but Sirius just reports that the knights were surprisingly decent. When asked about the relic, Ryfen just shrugs, saying his master told him to retrieve it, and he has no clue what it actually does. He keeps the lie simple so they can get going. Back at the demolished castle, Severus quietly corners Abron. He asks if he truly saw an aura user, and confirms he's with the Tennis Knight Order. As expected, word gets around fast. Eustace hears the chatter about Russ awakening his aura, and is sick with envy. He can't fathom how the bastard son of a harlot could get the power the elders always craved. His own father had a soft spot for Russ, and the very same elders, who once showered Eustace with praise, are now secretly celebrating. The household finally has an aura user, An aura user in the family could catapult the House of Tennis into the upper echelon of nobility. Eustace seethes, wondering where that leaves him. He's convinced that he and Eldrin alone are the true swords of tennis. On a distant cliff, Cyrus is laughing, completely thrilled that awakening his aura has changed everything. He's certain it's only a matter of time before he hunts down that thief and becomes the real sword of tennis. That's when a blonde man with a blank expression appears from nowhere. He's curious about this loser's good mood and wants to see this awakened aura for himself. When Cyrus proudly unleashes his blade aura, Eustace calls it beautiful. That comment makes Russ light up, thinking his brother is finally acknowledging him. But then, in an instant, with ice in his veins, the Golden Knight rams his sword deep into Cyrus's gut, while the blonde-haired punk launches a savage counterattack on Russ. He refuses to even acknowledge Russ as a fellow swordsman. With a contemptuous shove of his blade, he sends Russ plunging into the churning river below. But life's a funny thing, and this is a classic trope. The betrayed hero gets tossed into a river, miraculously survives, and crawls back later, burning for revenge. The blonde's buddies roll up asking what happened, and he weaves a tale about how Russ ambushed him, trying to steal the title of patriarch. He claims he just reacted in time. Now Russ is somewhere downstream with a fresh hole in his abdomen. Surviving that would be a miracle. And even if he pulls through, Russ would be in no shape to challenge the might of the Eldred family. While his former comrades search for a body, Siri is grilling our hero about how he knows Tilla. Our boy explains that the dwarves were the ones who rescued him. They pulled him from that very same river after a prophecy from their god Apoth declared he would be their savior. Tilla wholeheartedly confirms it, stating he's the one sent by the gods to save their people, which is why she's backing him. The elf is absolutely stunned. The young saint is baffled, wondering if dwarves even believe in God, and he's floored to learn they even have priests. Humans would never imagine that a race bred for slavery would worship a divine being. The saint adds that according to human belief, dwarves follow an evil god, since among the 12 major deities, Eldia, the goddess of elves, and Apoth, the god of dwarves, are practically unknown legends. Suddenly, Siri spots someone drowning in the river. They haul him to safety, and our hero recognizes the face immediately. It's Russ. He's totally bewildered, wondering why he's here, and if this is some kind of twisted part 2 of the prophecy. A while later, Russ finally comes to realizing his gut-wrenching mistake. He thought if he just became skilled enough, his brother Eustace would finally see him as family. But that monster never had any intention of accepting him. When he asks what happened, our hero explains they found him floating down the river more dead than alive and dragged him out. He learns they're now in the Vade barony. A full 3 days have passed since the bloodbath back at Kelburn Castle. Their original plan was to hole up at an inn and get a physician to patch Russ up, but the young saint took one look at the wound and declared he needed someone with serious skills. He tells Russ it was a good thing he's an aura user, otherwise he would have been a goner. Russ expresses his profound gratitude for them saving his life. Our hero is already thinking 5 steps ahead. Having the future sword saint owing him a life debt is a massive advantage. Even if they become enemies down the line, he'd have to think twice before trying to kill the very people who saved him. Our protagonist offers him some coin to get back on his feet and head home, but Russ drops a bombshell: he can't go back. He's been branded a traitor who tried to assassinate the heir. This makes everything click for our hero. Russ was supposed to awaken his aura and challenge his brother to an official duel to claim the successor title. At least that's how the story went in his previous life. With nowhere else to turn, a desperate Russ asks if he can join them on their quest. He needs to repay his debt, and he's thankful to our hero for helping him awaken his aura. Now, he wants to become even stronger by learning directly from him. The protagonist tries to play it cool, but Russ insists, saying it's enough to know that he is the Marshal, King Gerard's hand-picked successor. In the original timeline, Russ roamed the nation hunting for other aura users to hone his skills, but as a wanted man, that path is now closed to him. That means he has no other option but to seek knowledge from other nations. Aura masters, and our hero just happened to be the one who found him. He's freaking out internally that the legendary sword Saint Cyrus is now his subordinate. Flipping a future enemy into a powerful ally isn't a bad outcome, but the hero Alex and the Saint Ellen probably haven't even been born yet. Tesseron is completely out of the picture, leaving only the image of Light Jade, but he just can't accept Russ. Even with the guy begging to join him, our hero finally relents and agrees to let Russ travel with their party. Elsewhere, Eustace reports his failure to the Sage of Silver, admitting he couldn't complete the mission. Sage Leston is deeply disappointed. He now realizes he completely overestimated the boy. Eustace continues to apologize, terrified by the sheer power of the sage, who is speaking to him through nothing more than an illusion. Leston curses himself for ever trusting a half-baked swordsman, convinced this is exactly why. The Golden Knight Order was always pushed into the shadows by the Sword Saint. Soon after, he's summoned by Duke Ironad, who calls him out for his use of a divine symbol. Yet the Duke seems impressed. No one in the annals of history has ever awakened their aura at the tender age of 20. His production capabilities are off the charts, and have been instrumental in securing humanity's survival. That's the sole reason he was recommended for the Sages of Silver, despite his youth and inexperience. Purely because of his future potential, the Duke informs him that there won't be any disciplinary action this time. It's not like he caused a major disaster with the divine symbol, but he sternly warns him to remember his place. He first calls him by his name Leston, but then switches to his title Tesron. The Sages of Silver are the guardians of mankind, the secret society that controls the continent from the shadows. Their power is so immense, they can decide the fate of an entire nation. The problem is, Leston is at the very bottom of that food chain. He barely even managed to get his foot in the door. But his journey is far from over. The Demon King, a being who once plunged the entire world into an age of terror, has just been reborn. Now he's packing the unyielding body of a warrior and the genius mind of a grand mage. The real question is, who could possibly stop the living nightmare he's about to unleash? Tesron knows he has to make a move, and fast. He's plotting to take down the hero before he can reclaim his full cataclysmic power. From Tesron's point of view, it's a disaster that he even got his hands on the illusion's voice. But even for the freaking Demon King, powering back up to 100% shouldn't be a walk in the park. You see, the illusion's voice is hiding a secret weapon, the Four Symbols relic. And according to Jade, those artifacts are the exact source of the Demon King's original insane power. So the mission is clear: secure the Four Symbols relic before the hero can claim it. Meanwhile, back with the hero's crew, Russ is totally baffled that they're deciding chores by drawing straws. I mean, they could just make the elf slave do all the work, right? He straight up asks our boy what the deal is. And the hero's answer hits different. He explains that even though the world sees them as property, he refuses to treat them that way. To him, they're not slaves. They're his treasured companions. Russ had heard the rumors that this group was full of weirdos and absolute monsters in combat. But no matter what kind of guy the hero is, Russ has sworn an oath of loyalty until the day he finally masters the blade. Until then, he's all in. A little later, our hero decides to boot up the illusion's voice and test out the beginner-level challenge. He's getting bored of the default VR skin, so he customizes the background for a change of scenery. The training begins a flurry of attacks against magical tiles. As the speed ramps up, he starts to struggle, but he just barely clutches the win and clears the level. The illusion's voice is super efficient for training, but it's bloated with useless features like this artifact mode. Apparently, it was some kind of educational tool way back in the Silver Age. It lets you choose from all kinds of environments like a casino, a high school, or a park. The whole thing is decked out with hype music and cheering NPCs, and you get showered with points every time you clear a stage. It's a massive motivation boost that also levels you up. He can't help but wonder just how much people in the Silver Age must have despised studying. They had to gamify it this hard. Or maybe knowledge was so common back then that it was basically worthless. Still, this system is his ticket to recovering a serious chunk of his magical power. After traveling for a while, the crew finally arrives at the city of Trezand. This place is a massive military and commercial hub, the crossroads for all the northern trade routes. Just as planned, the old man delivers all the intel he was asked to gather. With this, he can finally piece together his body's history, since he supposedly lost his mind at the age of 16. The records say he had a total breakdown from some mysterious mental illness, insisting he was Tesron, not Reifenhart. This confirms it. The Martial King Tesron was reborn in this era. It's not a simple reincarnation. Tesron and the hero are body swapping. Our protagonist is shook. He never saw this twist coming. The intel also reveals that his body left Delphi's Mage Tower at age 20, and then completely vanished off the grid. He figures this is probably the limit of what a merchant guild could dig up. Back in his past life, Tesron didn't become an official mage until his late 20s. It wasn't because he lacked the skill. His superiors just wouldn't sign off on him leaving the tower. So, our boy is left wondering how his body even managed to escape. To get the real story, he decides he needs to hire a capable bounty hunter from the Tauban trade union. The hero gathers everyone and announces they're shipping out at dawn. He's keeping the true destination on the down low for now. Elsewhere, Silon and Russ are just chatting about how humble the hero is, always hiding his real strength. And just out of earshot, the hero himself is wrestling with a tough choice. Is it really safe to bring the young Saint and Russ along to Grand Forge? He makes his decision. It's time to come clean about where they're really headed. But first, he needs to lay his ultimate goal on the table. He needs them to understand his core belief that elves, dwarves, and orcs are not property. His dream is to build a world where every single one of them is free. He spells it out for them. These are beings with their own thoughts and feelings, not just mindless beasts to be ordered around. But it doesn't stop there. To make this dream a reality, he's willing to make an enemy of the entire world if he has to. Silon is in. He admits the dream sounds completely unrealistic, maybe even impossible. But he's always thought it was messed up how everyone treats these races like dirt. Plus, he knows he'll never find a crew this talented again, and he sees a chance to be a trailblazer spreading his teachings of charity to new peoples. The young saint is fired up too, totally ready to start jumping nobles and busting slaves out of their chains. And Russ, he figures since just pledging loyalty to this guy is already a crime, he might as well go all in. He's with them. With everyone on board, the hero makes one thing crystal clear. What they've discussed stays between them. Then he drops the destination they're heading for, Grand Forge home, to a sacred temple of a dwarven god. But the second they arrive, the crew is swarmed. This place is absolutely crawling with monsters, which explains why no one has ever made it this far before. There has to be a reason a dwarf built a temple in a death trap like this. And just then, phantom griffins dive in for the attack. Our boy yells to Russ, "Cover me!" As he unleashes an illusion-shattering spell to pinpoint the real one, the crew is wondering just how much longer this monster-filled trek is going to last. The hero lays it out. This journey would typically take 2 weeks, but thanks to a shortcut, he knows they'll knock it out in just 1 day. The very next day, the party is blitzing through Diamond's ruins, their promised shortcut. The elf can't shake the feeling that there's way more to the hero than he's letting on. A little later, the hero suddenly calls for a detour, claiming his master scouted out this forbidden route back in his youth. His explanations are only making Ciri more suspicious of him. As they finally arrive at the Grand Forge, the hero slams his fist against a solid wall. The wall crumbles, revealing the Temple of Alpoth right before their eyes, a sight that leaves the entire group absolutely floored. The sheer history pulsing from this place is insane. The young saint asks a little worried if they were the ones who just broke the temple, and if that's even allowed. Our boy just smirks, reassuring him that he wrecked a piece of this same temple in his past life and nobody batted an eye back then. Because Alpoth had already dropped an oracle about their arrival, dwarves suddenly swarm out from inside, ready for a fight. They see this as a full-blown invasion, and the hero instantly realizes there's no way he can reason with these guys. The temple looks completely different now, driving the dwarves into a frenzy over these human intruders. Rust, worried for his friends, gears up to charge right back at them. But the hero holds him back, stepping forward to convince them they aren't enemies. It's a little awkward, but he manages to spit it out. He's their prophesied savior, the human man from the Oracle of Alpoth. He announces that he's here to see the great priest Mashal, sent by the Steelhammer tribe, and just like that, the dwarves switch gears and offer a warm welcome. The Grand Forge is an entire city carved out 30 meters beneath the Setterlard Mountains, stretching an incredible 2 kilometers wide. The cavern itself soars between 30 and 50 meters high. A massive hot spring flows through it like a river, while geothermal stones embedded in the ceiling glow, with both heat and light. These glowing stones are spaced about 100 meters from each other. The dwarves begin to explain the city's incredible architectural design to the astonished group. Everyone is completely blown away by their craftsmanship. The dwarves explain that the Grand Forge was originally a ruin from the Silver Age. They just gave the interior a major remodel. But our protagonist knows the truth. This was a thriving dwarven city, even back in the Silver Age, which explains why the architecture is scaled so low. In other words, the dwarves of the Silver Age were so advanced they could build a metropolis like this. That kind of achievement would have been impossible if they were a species born to be slaves. The dwarven leader invites them to stay, bringing them a massive dinner for the night. When they ask, he describes the feast, mentioning that this particular food is especially good for men. Right on cue, a female dwarf rushes in. She brings a message: the hero has been summoned to the central tower by Alpoth's great high priest. There, Marshalpath Hammerline personally welcomes the hero. Meanwhile, Sage Tezron finally drifts off to sleep. He dreams of the epic showdown between the real Demon King Reganhart and the Martial King Tezron, who fought to break the Demon King's curse on the otherworldly races. The sage wakes with a jolt, realizing how he's been grinding nonstop for years. With a weak, scrawny body, he awakened his aura at the age of 20 and immediately used that power to strong-arm the elders of Delphi's Mage Tower. He demanded they grant him the rights of a formal mage. After that, he started networking, building alliances with people he knew would become influential. His scheming even landed him a spot among the prestigious Sages of Silver. His entire life was going exactly as planned, but he knows deep down he can't beat the Demon King with just his aura and 5-circle magic. The Demon King is on a whole other level, because Tessron's original body was just built different, and he's likely out there right now hunting for his old subordinates. And he's also trying to reclaim his lost magic. The sage knows he needs a crew of powerful warriors to even stand a chance of taking the Demon King down. Back in the forge, the hero introduces himself to the priest, which makes the old dwarf pause, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. The hero says, "This might be hard to process, but we met 10 years in the future." The priest is completely baffled. Our boy explains that he has literally traveled through time and journeyed across the continent. As a legendary mage, he got tangled up with the otherworldly species, while searching for a way to reach the god-tier 10th circle. That path eventually led him to fight against humanity itself, earning him the title of Demon King of the Antris Empire. He waged a massive war against the entire continent before he was finally defeated. He tells the priest it's his call whether to believe this insane story or not, but he adds if the priest really was one of his most trusted subordinates and a close friend, then he would have told him about this day. The priest decides to put him to the test, asking a trick question, "What color is my beard?" To which Ryfin replies that he doesn't have a real beard and is still rocking that same fake one 30 years from now, which is 100% true. He even knows the secret behind the fake beard. It was blessed by Allpoth in the dwarven otherworld. A massive beard is the ultimate symbol of manliness. You can be totally bald, but if you don't have a glorious beard, you're basically